Chapter 1543. After the night of the thunderstorm, the smuggling team that entered the territory of the western savages rushed for a few days and finally arrived at the agreed place. After confirming that the surroundings were safe and that there were no accidents, the group stopped and began to set up camp. This time was different from the past. They were going to stay here for a period of time, so the construction of the camp was much more meticulous. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Little Meat once again proposed to repair the house, plant trees, and cultivate fruits. Chinyu rubbed his nose as she glared at him. Up to you. Oomph. Little Meat sneered, then turned around and left. Chinyu's lips twitched. He knew that on that stormy night, he had deeply offended this person. Even after several days had passed, he still hadn't given him any face. Now that they were here, he would let her do as she wished for such a small matter. After all, it was hard to say when he might need the other party's help in the future. What needed to be eased was eased, and what needed to be repaired was repaired. General, Zhou Dafu walked over and bowed respectfully. Chinyu glanced at him. What is it? General, according to the agreement with the barbarians, the other party will arrive in 2 or 3 days after we get into position. Therefore, there are some things that you need to pay attention to during the transaction process. This subordinate wants to explain clearly to you. Chinyu nodded. Good. Let's talk in a tent. The temporary tent had already been set up. Although it was a little rushed, it was clean and tidy. Chinyu sat down. Zhou Dafu stepped forward on his own initiative and poured a cup of tea for him. Then he drew back, his hands hanging to the side. Say it, what's the matter? Chinyu picked up the teacup and took a sip, his expression calm. Zhou Dafu respectfully said, General, you must have come into contact with things like spatial artifacts, but there are some small problems that I need to discuss with you. If we smuggle Western savages, we'll lose our lives. I don't need to explain. You should know very well. That's why every time we come here, we'll bring as many resources as possible. The more we bring, the more space we'll take up. But the more space a spatial artifact can hold, the harder it is to refine, and the more valuable it is. For example, in our border armies camp, the Cosmos Ring in the hands of Marshal Wu can store all kinds of military supplies for a year. However, such a treasure is truly too precious, and there aren't many of them in the entire Western wilderness. Chinyu waved his hand, interrupting her. Get to the point. Zhou Dafu remained respectful. Reporting to General, the main point is that the large-scale spatial artifact itself will distort the surrounding space, making it very easy for the barbarians to detect it. That's why the ones we use for smuggling are all mid-grade spatial artifacts. We distribute them to our brothers to carry with them, and use their cultivation to suppress the dissipation of aura. As he looked at Chinyu's complexion, he spoke even faster. Although the barbarians have agreed to trade with us, they are our enemies from the start. They have no good intentions towards us. Sometimes they would suggest that the warriors under them fight against our brothers. Those who fail will have all their belongings taken away. Their target is our spatial artifact. Chinyu said, Can I take it off and fight? Zhou Dafu smiled bitterly. Of course not. This is what the barbarians want. If you spoil it, they will turn hostile. We're still in the land of the berserkers right now. Sometimes we have to accept our losses. Chinyu looked at him. So, the reason you've said so much is to tell me that I have to learn to suffer losses? Zhou Dafu said, A lack of forbearance in small matters will spoil great plans. Even if we suffer some losses, at the end of the trade, we will still be the ones earning more. He had a helpless expression. After all, the lords of the land want a sufficient return every year. If we can't achieve that, then that is our sin. Chinyu nodded. Interesting. I understand. When he said understood, he was speaking the truth. When he said interesting, he was referring to Zhou Dafu. He was indeed an interesting person. If it weren't for the fact that he had already sensed something and made a judgment in his heart, he feared that if it were anyone else, they would have been confused by him. To be able to put on an act as if it were real, this wasn't an ordinary person at all. Zhou Dafu bowed. There's also another point. Although the barbarians look similar to us humans, they are tall and sturdy and a bit more rough and wild. In terms of aesthetics, they are different from us humans. So, under normal circumstances, there won't be any problems. But no matter where we are, there will always be some people who are different. They have a strong desire to seek out our human women and have a taste of fresh jade. As he spoke to her, he hesitated. Chinyu frowned. Are you talking about Misty and Lotus Maiden? Zhou Dafu nodded. In order to avoid trouble, General should make arrangements early. Lotus Maiden will order her to stay in the tent and not casually walk around. But as for Misty, General will need to personally make arrangements. It would be inappropriate for this subordinate to speak. Chinyu sneered inwardly. If a barbarian dared to have ideas about Misty, that would be no different from seeking death. Of course, he didn't worry about this at all. Of course, he couldn't say these words. So, Chinyu nodded. I will speak with her. Zhou Dafu coughed. One last matter. I heard that General hoped that Misty would be in charge of the accounts, so you gave Lotus Maiden to her. How is the progress? I have received another batch of feedback on the latest accounts. I will need to report this to Lotus Maiden. Chinyu picked up a teacup. As he lowered his head to drink, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. After saying so much, this sentence was the key point. It seemed that no matter how cautious and careful Zhou Dafu was, he was still a bit anxious after not hearing anything for so long. Chinyu laid down the teacup and lightly said, If you want to report the accounts, go directly to Lotus Maiden. Yes. Zhou Dafu bowed. I won't disturb General's rest. I will take my leave. He turned and left. After leaving the tent, a gloomy look appeared in his eyes. Zhou Dafu resisted the urge to turn around and look. He walked away until he reached his own tent. Then, he let out a long breath. General Jinwu, he whispered, his eyebrows subconsciously furrowed together. He could feel the restlessness in his heart becoming increasingly thick. Things were progressing smoothly. Everything was progressing according to his expectations. But for some unknown reason, from the first time he saw General Jinwu, Zhou Dafu had a bad feeling in his heart. And what was more serious was that as time passed, this bad feeling didn't fade or dissipate. Rather, it accumulated more and more, turning into a restless feeling that stirred his mind today. This feeling was like a snake or rat on the ground being locked onto by an eagle that soared through the highest heavens. Although there was a great distance between the two sides, as long as the eagle wanted to, it could turn the snake or rat into prey in its belly at any time. Zhou Dafu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed all these thoughts in his mind. He looked up, his eyes shining brightly. Now that things had come to this, unless he completely gave up and didn't resist, he could only brace himself and continue on. Moreover, even if Zhou Dafu was willing to completely withdraw, would those people behind him be willing? These past years, they had grown accustomed to eating lavish meals. If they were strangled, the first thing they would do would be to kill him and eat his flesh. Zhou Dafu had seen too many scenes of families being destroyed. He absolutely didn't want such a tragic ending. Then, he could only give it his all. Moments later, after carefully considering the entire plan, Zhou Dafu clapped his hands. Someone came in from outside the tent and knelt on the ground. Go, bring me the latest accounts. I want to see Lotus Girl. He had personally laid out this chess piece, but he didn't know what went wrong. Until now, there hadn't been any response from her. He wanted to go take a look. Little Meat was really building a house. It was just that the method she used was different from that of ordinary people. It was unknown where she took out a seed from, but she dug a hole and threw it in. Then, she opened a jar of wine and poured it in. Soon the soil was pushed open and the seed broke out. A tender bud rapidly grew, and in a short hour, it had grown into a towering tree. The most amazing thing was that the tree itself emitted a rich fragrance of wine. If one carefully sniffed it, they would discover that the fragrance was coming from the fruits hanging from the crown of the tree. Little Meat snapped her fingers, and the crown of the tree dropped down on its own. It exuded endless flattery and brought the largest and most beautiful fruits in front of her. She casually picked one and poked a hole in it with her finger. The fragrance of wine instantly became rich. Little Meat's eyes shined. She hugged the fruit with both hands and drank to her heart's content. By the time she put it down, her little face had already turned red. And during this process, another fruit she had planted to the side was growing into a large tree. It was twisting its body, working hard to weave its branches into a tree house. That's right, this was the unusual method of building a house that she had mentioned before. Although it was called a tree house, this tree was far too large. It was so thick that it would take over a dozen people to wrap their arms around it. Because of this, its branches were lush, and the area of the treehouse was extremely large. Looking at it now, it was actually a small square courtyard with many rooms inside. And the strangest thing was that it was unknown how this tree had done it, but it was actually able to control its trunk. In a slanted and crooked posture, it forcefully used the uneven trunk to form a spiral staircase that led straight to the small courtyard. The large tree that was covered with wine fruits glanced at her with disdain. Half of its trunk retracted outwards, as if saying that she had lost all face of the tree world and that she didn't want to be associated with her. But as it turned its head, it brought the branch in front of Little Meat. She was dizzy from all the wine and patted the branch. Not bad. Not bad. The taste is very good. Bang, bang, bang. There was the sound of the earth shattering. Countless thick roots shot out from the ground behind the wine tree. They wove together, waving about like a great tail. After the tree house was finished, a branch stretched down. During this process, the branches and leaves wove together, turning into a comfortable, reclining chair. Little Meat leaned back, and the reclining chair was pulled into the air. Then, she quietly placed it outside the small courtyard where the shade of the trees was perfect for resting. She comfortably turned over, and as Little Meat moved, the reclining chair also constantly changed shape. She had to ensure that she was in a state of absolute comfort at all times. At this time, another branch broke through the air. The chicken overlord flapped its wings. Although it was extremely fast, it still couldn't outrun this branch. It was instantly entangled and held back. It was delivered to Little Meat's chest, where she reached out and hugged it. "Be good. Don't move. Let me hug you and sleep for a while." As the chicken overlord saw the branch quietly loosen and retreat, it wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It was just a tree. Was there need to flatter it so much? When Zhou Dafu came to look for the Lotus Maiden, he saw this from afar and was stunned. It had to be said that as the person in charge of the Emperor race's smuggling business, the wealth he had accumulated over the years could be called mountains and seas. Although he didn't dare to be greedy for everything, his standards were extremely high. There were all sorts of rare and wondrous treasures that he had never seen before. But Zhou Dafu swore that he had never seen such a great tree in his life. If it were said that monsters had developed spiritual wisdom, then there was no such thing. From the moment it was planted until now, it had only been an hour at most. Zhou Dafu's lips twitched as he looked at the sleeping Little Meat in the distance. He only felt the restlessness in his heart become increasingly thick. And what Zhou Dafu could see, the other people in the camp could also see. Zhou Xiaoshan's eyes were like he was looking at a fairy that had fallen from the heavens to the mortal world. There was only a single thought in his mind. Miss Little Meat really wasn't a woman of the mortal world. As for the other smugglers that had seen slaughter and bloodshed, their eyes widened. Their faces were shaken and filled with dread. Perhaps they couldn't understand what was happening, but they instinctively felt awe towards all people and things they didn't know about. The Golden General Ningqin was not an ordinary character. If he only brought this woman here, then there must be another reason. Qin Yu rubbed his face. It wasn't that the scene in front of him was too surprising. Rather, after determining who was the true person within Little Meat, he wouldn't be surprised even if she punched out and struck down one of the 9 suns in the sky. This was a bit of a stretch. If Little Meat really could strike down one of the suns with a single punch, then he would likely still open his mouth wide. But this wasn't the point. The point was that if something like this suddenly occurred, it would likely scare some people away and they wouldn't dare to act recklessly. This time, he would listen to Zhou Dafu's arrangements. He wanted to use this chance to sweep away all the hidden dangers. Thinking about it, Qin Yu shook his head. Things had already happened, so there was nothing he could do about it. Moreover, these were only minor problems. They were just two strange trees that hadn't revealed too much strength. This was his final chance. If Zhou Dafu wanted to do something, he would eventually do so. Lotus Girl was well aware of Zhou Dafu's goal. As soon as she saw him, she said, "The reason I haven't done anything is because I don't dare to." With what he saw just now, Zhou Dafu had some guesses. He thought for a moment and said, "Miss Little Meat, what is so special about her?" He believed in Lotus Girl's judgment. But today, Lotus Girl wasn't able to give him an answer. "I don't know." She was silent for a moment. Behind her veil, her eyes fell onto Zhou Dafu's face. "Considering that you once saved my life, I'll give you a word of advice. Don't try anything else, or you'll die. I'm officially withdrawing from this matter." Lotus Girl took a step back and turned to leave. Zhou Dafu didn't stop her. After a long period of silence, he took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. As he thought, things began to spiral out of control. He was well aware of Lotus Girl's methods. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used her as the first card. But it was clear that before this card could display its might, it had already been broken. And all of this wasn't done by General Jinwu himself, but by that seemingly ordinary demonic sect girl. Zhou Dafu believed in Lotus Girl's judgment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tried to ask her for an answer just now. But he wasn't Lotus Girl. Others could retreat, but if he did, all that awaited him would be death. Chapter 1544. On the third day of setting up camp, the first group of barbarians appeared in their range of observation. After a short and careful negotiation, they determined the other party's identity and were allowed to approach the camp. Zhou Dafu asked for Qin Yu's permission and then went out to greet them. Qin Yu saw Zhou Dafu smiling as he spoke with a tall barbarian. The two sides seemed to have some friendly relations. "My general is already waiting in the camp. Please follow me." Zhou Dafu gestured with his hand. The barbarian leader nodded. "I should go pay my respects to the general and thank him for sending so many necessary items to my tribe." Qin Yu was waiting outside the tent. He cupped his hands together and smiled. "Elder Mu Jin, welcome." As for the name, it was Zhou Dafu who had told him ahead of time. "Barbarian, Mu Jin greets General Jin." He bowed and said in a low voice. As he straightened himself, he impatiently said, "I wonder if you have prepared the items that my tribe needs? In particular, the gallbladders of the green willow snakes. I want as many as you have." Qin Yu looked at Zhou Dafu. He respectfully said, "General, we have already prepared the items that Elder Mu Jin needs." He stood up. "Today, the most important matter is to introduce General Jin to Elder Mu Jin. From now on, Lord General will be responsible for all matters. As for the specific transaction of materials, this time it will be me and Elder Mu Jin who will complete it." Mu Jin was overjoyed. "Thank you, Brother Zhou. Thank you, General Jin. In the future, my tribe will be your friend in the barbarian lands." The transaction soon began. After obtaining a sufficient amount of green willow snake gallbladders, Mu Jin was all smiles. He left behind the materials for the transaction, paid his respects to Qin Yu, and then bid his farewells. The entire transaction took less than half a day. When Mu Jin arrived, the ninth sun hadn't even risen above their heads, and when he left, it was only slightly to the west. Everything went smoothly. Mu Jin didn't reveal the least bit of strength or awkwardness. Even though some of his subordinates had cold eyes, they didn't stir up any trouble. Zhou Dafu came to report to Qin Yu. "General, the first barbarian tribes to arrive at the camp and complete the transaction are mostly ordinary in strength. Thus, when facing us, they don't dare to overstep their boundaries. But later on, the berserker tribes that come to trade will become stronger. At that time, we will have to be careful to avoid any accidents." He stopped talking for a moment before he flipped his hand and brought out a snake gallbladder that was sealed in a crystal. It was completely green, and a faint light would occasionally shine on its surface. "This is the gallbladder of a green willow snake. To the berserkers of Hibiscus tribe, this venomous item is perfect for them. It can neutralize the side effects of the berserker blood in their bodies, interfering with their minds when they reach a new realm, which is why it's very popular among them. However, according to the Empire's research, the Hibiscus tribe's barbarians who used this method to complete their breakthrough would have their vitality invaded by the poison, and their lifespan would be greatly reduced. The time of death of the barbarians from the Hibiscus tribe has also been confirmed. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. From this, he could see that although the Western wilderness smuggled goods for profit, they still had a bottom line. They had never given up on balancing and suppressing the berserkers. I understand. Zhou Dafu bowed and left. 3 barbarian trading teams arrived one after another over the next few days. But, just as Zhou Dafu had said, they were relatively weak. Towards the Western wilderness smuggling teams, they were much more polite. Both sides restrained each other, and the trade progressed smoothly. Every time, Zhou Dafu would introduce Qin Yu and point out that Jin would take over the trade. And after the trade was completed, he would take the initiative to meet Qin Yu and explain the details of the trade with the other tribes, as well as what he needed to pay attention to. Qin Yu increasingly felt that Zhou Dafu was a wonderful person, because even now, he couldn't help but doubt his previous judgment. Could it be that Zhou Dafu really was a saint that didn't have any thoughts of resistance? Could he have sent the Lotus Girl to Qin Yu purely because he wanted to present her to him in order to obtain his care? If this was really the case, then giving the Lotus Girl to little Misty was an absolute waste of a heavenly treasure. Cough, cough. He just thought about it and didn't do anything. Was it against the law? Qin Yu rubbed his chin, erasing some thoughts from his mind. In terms of acting, this was the first time he had someone he admired. If such a Zhou Dafu were to be killed, it would be too much of a pity. The matter of smuggling barbarians was something that everyone envied. Or perhaps, like true Saint Baiyu, they saw the hidden problems within. But in truth, Qin Yu didn't care. He didn't care about being tainted by the smugglers or whether or not he could become a commander. He also didn't care about how much he could obtain in the process of trading. Right now, all he thought about was the world-breaking token and how he could contact the barbarians. Although Qin Yu had already decided to take some risks, he absolutely wouldn't casually come into contact with some barbarians. For instance, the barbarian tribes that came to trade these past few days were relatively weak and had limited experience. He could only continue to maintain his silence. He had to wait. He had to wait for the truly formidable barbarian tribes to come. Only then would he act according to the situation. Little Misty lived a very comfortable life. But if one listened carefully, they had to admit that their skills were quite good. This person really knew how to enjoy life. Qin Yu took a deep breath and stepped forwards. He wasn't the first person to approach little Misty's dwelling, but he was the first person to be allowed to enter. As the root people formed from tree roots saw him approach, they stopped what they were doing and respectfully bowed. This scene caused endless envy to appear in the eyes of those around him. Before this, anyone who tried to approach would be hung up by the tree roots and thrown out after being whipped. That's right, everyone. It didn't matter how strong or weak their cultivation was. It didn't matter whether or not they excelled in stealth and concealment methods. In front of these 2 trees, nothing could hide. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. And this was the key reason why the smugglers envied little Misty. For these people, they had rushed through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They didn't care too much about some simple pleasures. But who wouldn't want these super strong tree guards? And as someone who possessed these tree guards, little Misty naturally received the harvest. They all looked at her with awe. The vast majority of the smugglers didn't know of Zhou Dafu's plan, but those that did felt their hearts turn cold. If an unknown little girl had such methods, then just how strong was the golden general Ning Qin? Just thinking about it was terrifying. Qin Yu walked to the side of the large tree and looked at the spiraling tree stairs in front of him. He paused for a moment and then stepped up. As he was climbing up the stairs, the branch chair that supported little Misty gently swayed several times. She drowsily opened her eyes and sniffed the air. Then she began to mutter, "Qin, you came at the right time. The food was just finished. She didn't need to use any strength to sit down on the branch chair." Then a branch brought a clear spring water over and gently sprinkled it on her face. Then a soft towel wiped her clean. Qin Yu stepped onto the platform of the treehouse. As he saw this, his lips couldn't help but twitch several times. Another chair rapidly formed from the branches. Chinyu walked over and sat down. Several ripe fruits were placed in front of him. Although the attitude these two trees had towards him couldn't compare to the flattery they had towards little Meaty, they were still absolutely respectful. Across from him, little Meaty released her hands. The chicken overlord quickly flew up and landed beside Chinyu. Its body was curled up, shivering from time to time. It looked as pitiful as it could be. Little Meaty narrowed her eyes. "Little chicken, are you complaining about me? Tell me, I hug you to sleep all day. So, just what is wrong with you?" If it were brave enough, or if it were someone else saying these words, the chicken overlord would definitely roll its eyes and retort. But it was clear that its courage wasn't so great. All it could do was lower its head and curl up like an ostrich burying its head in the sand, pretending as if it hadn't heard anything at all. Then, a pair of small eyes pierced through the feathers of its wings and looked at Chinyu with sorrow and resentment. He coughed. Facing the chicken overlord's pitiful eyes, Chinyu pretended not to see it. This bastard, he had originally encouraged little Meaty to go to the border army camp to look for him. He deserved to end up like this. "I'm hungry, so I came to scrounge a meal." Little Meaty lazily stretched out her waist and patted the branch chair beneath her. The two great trees each displayed their own supernatural powers. You brought food, and I brought wine. There were even roots that climbed up the tree trunks and onto the branches, weaving into two teams of musicians on either side. Soon, the food and wine were arranged. With a light sound, music began to play in his ears. The reason Chinyu had come here was because he couldn't hold back his saliva and was worried that it would flood his own tent. Now that he sat down at the table, there was no need to hide anything. He picked up his chopsticks and began to eat. The food entered his mouth. Hissed delicious, delicious. Really, there was no other way to describe it. There was no one else like this skill. After living for so many years, this was the first time that Chinyu had encountered a chef that could cook such delicious food. However, as he thought about how these chefs were actually the roots of two trees, he felt a bit strange in his heart. Whatever, he couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. Delicious food was right in front of him, so he would eat. Across from him, little Meaty gently rolled her eyes. She had an expression that said, "You're so ignorant. It's really laughable." She picked up her chopsticks and casually tasted a few bites. Then, she picked up a wine fruit, poked it, and slowly drank. A strong wind swept through. By the time Chinyu comfortably burped and patted his stomach, the table was already a mess. Humph! There was a mocking laugh from across from him. Chinyu pretended not to hear it. He picked up the wine fruit and imitated little Meaty. "TSK, TSK, this life was great." Chapter 1545. Does it taste good? Across from him, Meaty looked Chinyu up and down, a strange expression on her face. Chinyu didn't speak. He gave her a thumbs up. If the dishes he had eaten were the best he had ever seen in his life, then this wine must also be the best. Moreover, the feeling it gave him was even greater. As he swallowed a mouthful, he felt as if he were floating on clouds. It was like he was soaking in an incomparably gentle spring, constantly swaying up and down. Then, there was no then. As his vision darkened and he fell into a deep slumber, Chinyu's last thought was, this wine was strong enough. Meaty snapped her fingers. Large tree branches wrapped around him from both sides, forming a thick barrier that blocked out his line of sight. She sat up straight. As she looked at the sleeping Chinyu, her eyes were bright. Huh! He felt as if he had been thrown into a pot of boiling oil. It was like all the blood in his body had been replaced with red magma. His breathing was heavy. Every time he gasped for breath, it was like two heavy bellows were being pulled. Impulsive thoughts broke out from the depths of his heart, crazily impacting his mind, making him go crazy. Chinyu could feel that there was a slim figure in front of him. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't grasp her in his hands. The burning sensation grew stronger and stronger. Just as Chinyu felt as if his entire body would burn up, the figure in front of him suddenly approached. His hands couldn't wait to pull her into his embrace. However, before he could feel the softness from his fingers, a finger was placed on his glabella. The ice-cold aura was like a dripping water droplet, quickly spreading and transmitting outwards. His consciousness fell into a brief blank. Then, like a drowning person being rescued from the water, Qin Yu's eyes shot open, and he gasped for breath. It was only then that he discovered that he was lying on a large bed made from tree branches. His clothes were soaked with sweat, and he was sore and weak. But his body gave him an unprecedented feeling of being in a good condition. Misty stood in front of the bed, her face full of ridicule. "Qin Yu, it looks like you had some incredible dream." As she spoke, her eyes swept around. Qin Yu looked down and jumped up. His legs were sore, and he stumbled, nearly falling to the ground. Then, without any hesitation, he dashed away without looking back. On this day, the atmosphere in the entire camp was extremely strange. The smugglers did not dare to say anything. They raised their eyebrows and signaled to each other with their eyes. "Did you see that?" "Of course I did." "Amazing. TSK, TSK. It's indeed powerful." Jin Wu had Ning Qin eat and drink with Miss Ro Ro of the Devil Sect. Then, a large number of branches wrapped around them, making it so that not even a drop of water could pass through. For an entire 2 hours, no one knew what exactly happened in the study. In the end, General Jin Wu's face was pale. He couldn't hide his weariness and weakness. He rushed into the sky and hurriedly fled. Everyone could clearly see the sweat dripping from his body and the flustered look on his face. Other than a blockhead who didn't understand human emotions, any normal person would know what had happened even if they used their knees to think. The chubby girl's figure didn't look wild, but he didn't expect her to be so fierce. Even someone like General Jin Wu was unable to withstand the onslaught and fled in defeat. Or could it be that General Jin Wu himself had some unspeakable secret? Thinking up to here, everyone looked at the tent with even more strange gazes. Qin, you could clearly feel the ridicule and sympathy in the eyes of these bastards. But he wasn't in the mood to care about them. Of course, he wasn't anxious or annoyed because he had been taken advantage of. He was very healthy. This was something that little Meaty could prove. Cough, cough, I've gone off topic. Let's bring it back. Qin Yu was silently feeling the changes in his body. To be more precise, on that day when he ate and drank in little Meaty's treehouse and then experienced that fiery dream, the changes had occurred. First, his mortal body had become stronger. After becoming the new Goliath Empress, the bloodline of the Goliath Sovereign had been quietly strengthening his mortal body. The Goliath race was famed for their powerful mortal bodies. In normal circumstances, this would be a slow process. But after eating and drinking, Qin Yu discovered that his mortal body had strengthened by a great deal. It could be said that eating and drinking had caused the intensity of his mortal body to increase by several percent. With Qin Yu's current mortal body strength, this sort of increase was already incomparably amazing. But this was only a relatively unobvious part of the changes in his body. And what was even more amazing was Qin Yu's soul. It was like an iron ingot placed in a crimson furnace. After being burned at high temperatures and struck by a heavy hammer, the impurities contained within were removed. His soul was now clear and smooth, as if it had reached a new level of enlightenment. It was truly worthy of being a mysterious existence hidden in space-time. Even something he casually ate and drank had such amazing effects. As the saints said, only a bastard wouldn't take advantage of others. Qin Yu definitely wasn't willing to do so. With the title of egg, he had to take advantage of others. The reason why he had been holed up in his tent these past few days and didn't go out to see anyone, even handing over the dealings with the Goliath race to Zhou Dafu, was because he wanted to digest and absorb his gains with all his might. Today, he was ready. Letting out a deep breath, Qin Yu revealed a solemn expression. He left his tent, welcomed the countless eyes that gathered on him, and headed straight for the treehouse. Just like last time, he was treated with great courtesy. The roots all bowed, allowing him to walk unimpeded as he climbed up the stairs to the treehouse. Little Meaty was woken up by the shaking of a chair on a branch once more. She opened her slightly blurred eyes and looked at Qin Yu standing across from her. Her lips curved up in a sneer. But because she hadn't woken up yet, or perhaps because she was too tired, her expression wasn't quite right. Luckily, the flattering trees didn't lose their respect for Chinyu because of this. They took the initiative to weave a chair for him. Chinyu sat down and coughed. "Little Meaty, I was rude last time, so I came here to apologize." Little Meaty's eyes opened a slit, and she narrowed her eyes at him. "Are you hungry again? This was just too disrespectful. Why couldn't they say things tactfully? Why do they have to push him into a wall?" Chinyu took a deep breath and nodded. "Face. That's right. When he was full and had nothing better to do, it was indeed important. But now, a chance to enhance his strength was right in front of him. You want to mention Face to me? What is this? Can it be eaten or drunk?" Little Meaty curled her lips and closed her eyes again. "I'm tired, don't bother me." Her words weren't polite, but it was clear that the two flattering trees had obtained permission. The root men immediately began to move around in a cheerful manner. Some picked vegetables and some washed them. Soon, a fire was lit and oil was poured over it to cook. A fragrant aroma wafted into his nose. Chinyu sucked in a deep breath, his saliva instantly filling his mouth. The dishes were served and the wine was served. String and bamboo instruments began to play. He glanced at the sleepy Little Meaty across from him. Chinyu picked up his chopsticks and tapped them on the table. "Then I won't be polite." His chopsticks flew down, sweeping away the clouds. The taste was the same as last time, exploding with flavor. Those who ate couldn't stop themselves. These were clearly some very ordinary dishes, but for some unknown reason, after being processed by the root men chef, the taste became inconceivable. As usual, Chinyu ate until his belly bulged out. Only then did he let out a breath and put down his chopsticks. He reached forward and a branch stretched out. He thought for a moment and then picked up 2 wine fruits. "If you want to be burned to death, you can drink as much as you want." Across from him, Little Meaty opened her eyes and sneered. Chinyu thought for a moment. He put down one of the wine fruits and picked up the other one. He drank it all in one gulp, to his heart's content. This time, his condition was slightly better. Perhaps it was because of his previous experience, but Chinyu tried his best to maintain a clear mind. But this was only for a little longer. Darkness arrived once more, submerging the world in front of him. It was another dream filled with a fiery heat, restless and restless. Chinyu kept trying to grasp onto the figure in front of him. It was only when she approached on her own initiative and was hugged that a cool feeling spread out from between her eyebrows. After a brief period of blankness, he suddenly became clear-headed. "Who?" Chinyu opened his eyes and gasped for breath. Little Meaty glanced at him and then turned to leave. She walked to the platform of the treehouse. The branch chair automatically came over, allowing her to lie down in the most comfortable position. Closing her eyes, Little Meaty let out a light breath. As if she were extremely sleepy, she almost instantly fell asleep. He pulled on his clothes to cover up some of his indecent places. Then he sat down cross-legged and sensed the changes within his body. After several breaths of time, he opened his eyes, a bit of joy in them. It really was like this. He stood up and walked to Little Meaty's side. After a moment of hesitation, he bowed. Although what Chinyu enjoyed seemed like Little Meaty's daily food and drink. But these things clearly couldn't be measured in terms of pure food and drink. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that these were rare treasures in this world. If the effects of this meal were to be spread out, it was unknown how many people would cry and shout, willing to pay any price to eat and drink. Chinyu would obtain a great advantage. He was well aware of this. What he also knew was that Little Meaty tacitly allowed him to do this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have received such treatment this time. Why? This was a mysterious existence hidden in space-time, powerful and unfathomable. According to the words of the stone pagoda, it was one of the most terrifying existences in the world. Why did it treat him so differently? All of these thoughts occurred as Chinyu bowed. When he straightened himself, he took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. He glanced at the sleeping Little Meaty and then turned to leave. On this day, a new story spread through the camp. To sum it up, it was General Jinwoo wasn't willing to admit defeat. He rested for several days before fighting again, but he was utterly defeated. Dafu lightly coughed. He cupped his hands together and said, "Tribe leader Frigid Moon, the person you see is our General Jinwu." Across from him, Frigid Moon, who was a relatively barbarian and could be considered thin and weak, had a gloomy expression. With his cultivation, even if he didn't eavesdrop, he could still hear all of the whispers around him. Thus, General Jinwu of the Western Wasteland had gone to meet a woman in private rather than personally transact with him. Humph, General Jinwu, your reputation really isn't as good as it sounds. With a cold sneer, Frigid Moon turned and left. Zhou Dafu bitterly smiled and quickly chased after her. Tribe leader, please don't be angry. We are still full of sincerity in our transaction. Even a basket of good words wasn't able to change the complexions of the Frigid Moon tribe. Watching them angrily leave, Zhou Dafu rubbed his eyebrows, a helpless look on his face. The Frigid Moon tribe's clear heart lotus grass, in the hands of a top alchemy grandmaster of the Western Wasteland, could be refined into the amazingly effective cold moon pill. Simply put, they were the targets that all the trading teams of the Western Wasteland were trying to win over. In the past, in order to obtain the right to trade with the Frigid Moon tribe, Zhou Dafu had expended a tremendous amount of effort. He had even privately clashed with a big shot of the military. But now, all of this effort would likely be completely destroyed by General Jinwu. Zhou Dafu took a deep breath and looked up at the 9 suns in the skies. Calculating the time, they should have arrived. Although many changes had occurred, there was no turning back once the bow was drawn. He could only brace himself and continue down this dark road. He hoped that the result would be as he wished. As he was preparing to head to Little Meaty's residence for the 3rd time to freeload, he was stopped by Zhou Dafu. Qin Yu bitterly smiled and bowed. "General, since you wanted to cause a ruckus before, I followed you. But the Golden Crow tribe that is coming today is one of the most powerful tribes in the vast western wilderness. This time, our 2 sides will be trading many materials. You must personally come, otherwise I fear there will be an accident." His first thought was to refuse. At this time, he was no longer in the mood to play along with Zhou Dafu. But thinking about it, he nodded and agreed. If he could resolve this quickly and solve all the problems at once, then no one would disturb him to freeload. An hour later, the Golden Crow tribe arrived. At this moment, the light released by the 9 suns in the skies suddenly rose. The air became dry, and the green grass on the ground withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, it withered and turned yellow. The smell of burning was cold and cruel. It was like a burning mountain that pressed down on everyone's chests. Within the camp, all the smugglers subconsciously tensed up, a deep fear in their eyes. The Golden Crow tribe warriors wearing crimson armor with only their eyes exposed were the first to arrive at the camp. Then, there were 2 unknown fire beasts pulling the heavy chariot at the back. The surface of the cart was engraved with countless flame runes. It was like a miniature sun, recklessly releasing heat. Ka! With a soft sound, the flaming chariot opened, and a handsome man with long, fiery red hair walked out. Zhou Dafu's complexion changed. He cried out, "How could it be him?" At this moment, the entire camp was deathly silent. Chapter 1546. According to Zhou Dafu's plan, the Golden Crow tribe was the one who could kill the Golden Crow general and save him from the hopeless situation. But he did not expect that the person who appeared in front of him today would be this person. As mentioned before, the aesthetic standards of the barbarians and the human race were different. But there were always exceptions, such as the mentality of seeking novelty and trying new things. The fiery red-haired, incomparably handsome young man before him was the product of such a mindset. Although the human race and the barbarians looked similar, they were not the same race. The possibility of them having children was very low. His birth was an accident with a very low probability. It was said that the reason why he was able to be born and come to this world alive was because his father, who was related to him by blood, wanted to see with his own eyes what a rare hybrid between a human and a barbarian looked like. When he was born, his mother died in childbirth. He was cut open and sent to his father, covered in blood. So that's how it looks like. The barbarian man, who was drunk, waved his hand and decided the fate of the newborn baby. Since he had seen it, there was no need to keep him. Although his actions were absurd, he was still a noble among the barbarians. He would not allow his bloodline to be tainted. Although the story of what happened after was widely spread among the barbarians, it was mostly hearsay. No one knew what really happened. The result was that the abandoned baby returned to the tribe, where he was born with a head full of blood-red hair. He killed his father in name and was recognized by the totem of the tribe, the Golden Crow, and became an elder of the Golden Crow tribe. He was born without a name, so he called himself the Golden Crow. This behavior was obviously not recognized by the others in the tribe. But later on, these people all died, and gradually, no one dared to express their opinions on this matter. The Golden Crow of the Golden Crow tribe was widely known in the barbarian world to be cruel and bloodthirsty. Over the years, the number of barbarians who died in his hands was innumerable. And to the other half of his bloodline, the human race, the Golden Crow was even more cruel and ruthless. Because of this, after a deal with the Golden Crow tribe led to a bloody tragedy, the Golden Crow was forbidden to participate in the deal. But today he had appeared here. Fine beads of sweat broke out on Zhou Dafu's forehead, and his face turned pale. He had indeed hoped that General Jinwu would be killed in the Berserker's territory, but he did not expect that he would have to die with him. Jinwu got off the carriage. With a light pop sound, a stone under his feet shattered. The two fiery beasts, which had been pulling the chariot, directly kneeled on the ground. Gold Crow clan warriors, who had been following behind the chariot, jumped off their horses and kneeled on the ground. The world was deathly silent. A smell called fear spread in the air. The Golden Crow wore a calm expression as he took a deep breath. A hint of intoxication could be seen on his handsome face. Such a rich wine fragrance. Unlike his appearance, his voice was coarse and hoarse, like a rusty piece of iron rubbing against the uneven surface of stone. Turning his head, he gazed into the distance in the direction where the wine fragrance was coming from. Thereupon, he saw two large trees and an exquisite treehouse. Eyes sparkling, Gold Crow smiled and said, "This wine, our Gold Crow clan wants it." Zhou Dafu was sweating profusely. Being shrouded by his gaze, he felt his legs go weak. Using all of his strength, he was barely able to stand where he was without collapsing to the ground. His Adam's apple bobbed several times. He wanted to speak, but he discovered that he couldn't make a sound. He could only anxiously look at Qin Yu. The Golden Crow followed Qin Yu's eyes turned. "It seems that the rumors are true. You have changed your leader. This must be General Golden Crow." He clapped his hands, the smile on his face becoming increasingly gentle. "Our names are quite similar. How about you sell this wine to us at half price?" After planting his soul into the world spirit embryo, Qin Yu's perception had become extremely sharp. He could even see through the person hidden within Meaty's body. Moreover, this person in front of him was a Golden Crow elder whose cultivation was far inferior to his. In Qin Yu's eyes, what stood in front of him was a mass of raging flames that emitted an endless aura of madness and destruction. But in his heart, he was still calm. It was just that there was something strange about this calmness. This tyrannically strong Golden Crow clan barbarian in front of him seemed to be seeking death. To think that he would go straight to the point and look for Meaty. As the new Goliath Emperor, although Qin Yu hadn't officially appeared on stage, he couldn't just stare on helplessly as he sent himself to his death. For better or worse, he should at least give him a chance to live. "The wine is not for sale." A single sentence. 3 words. His refusal was clean and direct. Zhou Dafu's body shook and his eyes widened. Beads of cold sweat dripped down his body, soaking his robes. He looked at Qin Yu, his lips trembling. He wanted to shout out, "You want to die? Don't drag us down with you." But just now he was so scared that he couldn't speak, much less now. Qin Yu glanced at Zhou Dafu, who was shivering like a ball. He thought that no matter how big or small he was, he really had lost face today. However, when he found that those smugglers, who were used to living on the edge of a blade, had their bodies tightened, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. He realized that this Gold Crow clan man in front of him seemed to have quite a reputation. But that was all. Qin Yu's expression was still calm. It wasn't that he was arrogant, but let alone these people in front of him. Even if the entire Golden Crow clan came, little Meaty could suppress him by herself. Drawing back 10,000 steps, he was the new Goliath Emperor. If it weren't for the fact that he was wary of the human cultivation system, he would have already started investigating him. If he directly revealed his identity, then this arrogant Golden Crow clan barbarians would tremble and kneel on the ground. Arrogant and tyrannical? Not qualified. The Golden Crow narrowed his eyes. This human and barbarian hybrid was so handsome that even a frown was pleasing to the eye. He looked at Qin Yu. Do you want to die? Behind him, the Golden Crow clan warriors kneeling on the ground all looked up. There seemed to be raging flames in those pairs of eyes, and the heat in the air suddenly rose by a notch. In the next moment, it seemed as if it would burn up, wrapping around Qin Yu and burning him to ashes. Qin Yu lightly said, I also want to ask this question. He took a step forwards, his eyes as sharp as swords. Do you want to die? The Golden Crow was expressionless. After several breaths of time, he suddenly laughed. Interesting, really interesting. It's been a long time since someone has dared to be insolent in front of me. Although he was laughing, his fists were tightly clenched within his sleeves. The Golden Crow couldn't understand why this ordinary-looking Golden Crow general in front of him would give him such a great pressure. It was like a giant, invisible stone was pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. In particular, when he said the word die, the Golden Crow discovered that he really did feel a trace of fear. It was as if as long as the Golden Crow wanted to, he could easily kill him. It was because of this that the Golden Crow laughed. He used this to suppress the ruthlessness that surged deep in his heart. In these past years, the Golden Crow had killed countless people. If he really was a mindless slaughtering demon, he would have already sent himself into a hopeless situation. On the contrary, beneath his cruel and ruthless exterior, the Golden Crow had a calm and intelligent heart. Golden Crow General, you are to my liking. Let the transaction begin. The Golden Crow laughed and waved his hand. Behind him, the Golden Crow clan warriors walked forwards. Qin Yu glanced at Zhou Dafu. After several breaths of time, Zhou Dafu regained his composure and hurriedly bowed. As he arranged the transaction between the two sides, Zhou Dafu would occasionally sneak glances at Qin Yu. He was well aware of the Golden Crow's reputation. But Zhou Dafu's fear towards this barbarian wasn't just because of this. It was also because he had personally experienced the terrifying murder of the Golden Crow clan in the past, and was one of those who had luckily survived. Zhou Dafu had personally witnessed his companion's tragic death. Now, there was a long and horrifying scar on his back. That saber strike had nearly cut him in half. It was only because his life was tough that he managed to survive. Although it could be said that it was precisely because of that murder that Zhou Dafu had seized the opportunity to rise up and become the smuggler later on. It was difficult for him to regard the Golden Crow as his benefactor. There was only endless fear in his heart. Because of this fear, he subconsciously wanted to understand. It could be said that Zhou Dafu had a deep understanding of the Golden Crow. Of course, he could realize that his performance today wasn't right. Even though he had been directly threatened by the Golden Crow general, he had still chosen to keep the peace. Zhou Dafu didn't know the truth, but his intuition told him that the root of this matter lay with the Golden Crow general. Zhou Dafu didn't know the truth, but his intuition told him that the root of this matter lay with the Golden Crow general. The Golden Crow clan was a great tribe of the barbarians, and their background was extremely deep. They were one of the most powerful trading partners for the Emperor race's smuggling teams. The exchange of goods between the two sides continued for over half a day. When the last transaction was finalized, Zhou Dafu didn't pause at all. He directly reported to Qin Yu. General, the transaction has been completed. Although, for some unknown reason, the Golden Crow hadn't gone crazy yet. But fear still lingered in his bones. He no longer wanted to borrow a knife to kill others. He only wanted to send this person away as soon as possible. Cheney nodded. He looked over. I won't send you off. On the other side, the golden crow suddenly said, Wait a moment. Zhou Dafu's heart skipped a beat. He thought this was bad. As he thought, the golden crow lightly said, My tribe's warriors wish to exchange pointers with your cultivators. This is a long-established tradition. General Golden Crow shouldn't refuse, right? Things like traditions, forget about them. Life wasn't easy, so couldn't you cherish them a little more? Cheney was about to refuse when he suddenly frowned. He nodded and said, Sure. Good. The Golden Crow laughed. His voice was like a broken gong and drum, extremely sharp and unpleasant to the ear. This place is not wide enough. Let's go there. Although we can't buy wine, it's good to smell it. Cheney glanced at him and stood up. Let's go. He stepped forward. The Golden Crow looked at his back, a trace of surprise in his eyes. He didn't know why, but that glance just now had caused his heart to tremble. Chapter 1547. Beneath the two trees, the root people bowed and dispersed, returning underground. Thick green branches overlapped, forming a barrier that covered the treehouse. But Cheney knew that little Meaty was hiding in the back, watching. That was because the whole thing had been done out of her will. He didn't know what she wanted to do. Cheney looked up and glanced at the other side, a bit of helplessness in his heart. Wasn't it good to be alive? Zhou Dafu walked over and respectfully bowed. General, the arrangements have been made. After a moment of hesitation, he lowered his voice. The Golden Crow tribe is strong, and we are in the territory of the barbarians. It is not shameful for us to silently endure. I ask that General consider the overall situation and not act impulsively. Cheney glanced at him. I understand. He was naturally aware of Zhou Dafu's warning. But in truth, Cheney really didn't plan on doing anything. Little Meaty had set up this trap, so all he needed to do was watch. There was no need for an opening or any nonsense. With a wave of the Golden Crow's hand, the so-called exchange of pointers began. The Golden Crow tribe warrior was indeed strong. As he stepped onto the stage, the armor on his body began to emit crimson flames. The air was burned by the high temperature, causing it to distort. Only his cold and cruel eyes remained extremely clear. In comparison, the aura of the smuggler from the other side was much weaker. His face was pale, as if he hadn't seen the sun for hundreds of years. Beads of sweat covered his forehead, evaporating under the high temperature and emitting white steam. It seemed that he would ascend at any moment. Bang! Flames shot up into the sky. On the surface of the Golden Crow tribe warrior's body, a flame giant condensed. With a single step, the ground cracked and cracked. Then, under the extreme heat, the ground began to show signs of melting. A fist wrapped in flames howled through the air. The smuggler's face was deathly pale. He rolled away in embarrassment, barely dodging the attack. The following exchange of pointers could be seen as a one-sided beating. On one hand, this Golden Crow tribe warrior was tyrannically strong. On the other hand, even though he was a smuggler from the other side, he still held back when attacking. At the very least, Cheney had seen several times where he clearly had the chance to counterattack, but in the end he didn't. This was probably the so-called forbearance. Zhou Dafu was slightly worried. He glanced at the Golden Crow from the corner of his eyes. The conversation between him and the Golden Crow made him very uneasy. Fortunately, General Jin Wu seemed to have heard what he said. Although he frowned slightly, he didn't have any intention of interfering. That's great. As long as General Jin didn't act recklessly, there shouldn't be any major trouble today. At most, a few people would die, and some trading resources would be lost. That was within a controllable range. Outside this sparring battlefield, the smugglers who were watching the battle remained silent. Although this was not the first time that most of them had seen this scene, the air was still filled with an oppressive feeling. The people who had been sent to spar were their companions and companions. They had struggled for survival together, licking blood from the edge of a blade to survive until now. But now, he could only be an abandoned chess piece, waiting for death in despair. Zhou Dafu could feel the gazes of the people around him. His expression didn't change, as if he didn't feel anything. Only by enduring and bearing the losses could he avoid even greater trouble. This was the only survival rule of all smuggling teams in the Western Barbarians. Ah! Amidst the screams, the figure wrapped in flames fell heavily to the ground. The smell of burning flesh and blood filled the air. He hadn't died yet. He was crazily struggling on the ground, but his torn chest and the terrifying, scorching heat of the sun's true fire had already determined his final fate. A smuggler suddenly rushed out and pounced on the burning figure. "We lost!" Zhou Dafu shouted out loud. He flicked his sleeves, stirring up sand and extinguishing the flames. He glared at the smuggler next to him, his cold eyes telling him not to move. Then, he personally took the storage ring from the man's burnt and festering finger. "If you agree to the bet, you must accept your loss. The thing is here." He raised his hand and threw the ring. "Huh!" The Gold Crow tribe warrior reached out and caught the ring. He licked the corner of his mouth, and a trace of ferocious excitement flashed in his eyes. Then, he reached out his hand and pointed outwards, letting out a low roar. Roar! Zhou Dafu's complexion changed. Before he could speak, the Gold Crow laughed. His sharp and ear-piercing voice sounded out. "My son isn't satisfied yet. Then, let him continue to fight. Strictly speaking, our clan has suffered a loss. Zhou Dafu, you shouldn't refuse, right?" He looked at Ji Hao. His tone wasn't harsh, but his eyes were cold, piercing straight to the marrow. Zhou Dafu's body froze, and his face paled. The one that the Gold Crow tribe warrior pointed at was the smuggler who had just rushed out. Number 1 and Number 2. Number 2 was the younger brother of Number 1. He was supposed to be chosen, but Number 1 snatched his number and was lying on the ground at the moment. "I will go." Number 2 gnashed his teeth and said. Zhou Dafu took a deep breath. "You have to know what you should do." Number 2 nodded, glanced at his brother, who was gasping in pain and was about to die at any moment, then turned around and left with big steps. The second competition began. Number 2, who was filled with hatred, obviously didn't hesitate to attack. He was truly risking his life. If the opponent's will was slightly weaker, or if they felt fear, they might really be able to kill a strong enemy. But to the Gold Crow tribe warrior, once he failed, his ending would be even more terrifying than death. Therefore, Number 2 risked his life, but the result was that he lost even faster. While screaming, he became the second burning man. Compared with the Gold Crow tribe warrior, there was still a big gap between him and the Gold Crow tribe warrior. Of course, Number 2's risking his life wasn't in vain. The shoulders of the Gold Crow tribe warrior, where the armor couldn't cover, were now badly mutilated, and one could vaguely see his red bones. The smell of burning flesh and blood in the air grew stronger. "This smell, it stinks." A dissatisfied voice came from the big tree. Then, large branches spread out and dripped down a large amount of dew. Clatter. The dew spread and soaked the bodies of the 2 burning men on the ground. An amazing scene happened. The horrible wounds caused by the Essence Sun fire healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The festering flesh and blood quickly withered and fell off, exposing the healthy skin underneath. Everyone subconsciously widened their eyes, their faces filled with shock. Number 1 and Number 2 struggled to get up. As their bodies moved, the surface of their skin fell off like mud, revealing their incomparably pale faces. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. They looked down at their newly grown fingers and fell to their knees, repeatedly kowtowing towards the treehouse. "Thank you, miss. Thank you, miss." If one didn't personally experience it, they would never know just how horrifying it was. Little Meaty wrinkled her nose, a look of disgust on her face. "Don't kneel. Your body stinks. Hurry up and get up." She curled up her legs and sat on a tree chair, glaring at Chinyu. "These people are too noisy. Hurry up and make them leave." Chinyu understood. The meaning in Little Meaty's eyes was, "You owe me another favor." As for where this favor came from, of course, it was she who had saved these 2 smugglers. Little Meaty's first label was that she was a member of the Devil Sect, but her current identity was that of a Gold Crow general's woman. This was something that everyone in the Xizang border army camp was aware of. She had saved people, which also meant that the Gold Crow general had saved people. Qin, you could feel the changes in the eyes of the smugglers as they looked at him, but he didn't appreciate it all. In fact, he even snorted disdainfully. All of this was because of you. If it weren't for you interfering, then I would have directly refused this matter and waited for them to admit defeat or go crazy. These two people have suffered so much because of you, but now they are filled with gratitude towards you. TSK, does your conscience not hurt? Little Meaty arched an eyebrow. What was conscience? Qin, since when did you care about such things? As the two of them were exchanging glances, the Golden Crow was staring at Little Meaty in a daze. He had already spoken of his origins before. As a half-human, half-barbarian existence, the Golden Crow's appearance was highly similar to that of a human. In fact, it could even be called extremely handsome. This indirectly caused the Golden Crow's sense of beauty to be different from that of the barbarians. He hated humans, but he also loved to play with human women. Of course, in the end, the fates of these human women weren't too good. But today, the Golden Crow suddenly felt an unprecedented impulse. This woman was his. He had to have her. He was like a hungry wolf that had seen a delicious prey. With a single glance, the image was imprinted in his heart, and he could no longer pull it out. Whoosh! The Golden Crow suddenly stood up and pointed to the treehouse. Offer her to me, and I will return all the spoils of the previous 2 battles to you. Then I will immediately take my people and leave. Zhou Dafu's face was filled with despair. If it were any other woman, even if she were the mother of his child, he wouldn't even bat an eyelid if he could quickly send away these Gold Crow clan people. But it just so happened that this woman was the Golden Crow clan's woman. It could be seen that the Golden Crow clan people didn't interest him at all. If it was anything else, he might have endured it. But when it came to his woman, how could he give up? It was over, it was all over. Number 1 and Number 2, who had just crawled up from the ground, fiercely glared at the Golden Crow. Their lives had been saved by this girl. It was only natural that they would die for her. It was just that they didn't understand why they had suddenly become so grateful and grateful people. They could even disregard their own lives. Everyone's eyes fell on Qin Yu, waiting for him to turn hostile. The smugglers in the camp had tensed up, as if they could already see the scene of a life or death battle. Good. Qin Yu suddenly spoke. He sat down on a chair and picked up a cup of tea. The world suddenly fell silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at him blankly. Their minds were in a mess. He agreed. How could this be? The Golden Crow clan general was actually such a Golden Crow clan general. Zhou Dafu suddenly felt as if he could breathe again. He hurriedly screamed, "General is wise and righteous." Before he could finish speaking, he received a heavy blow to the mouth. Several teeth flew out, and he fell to the ground. Little Meaty angrily drew back her hand. She placed her hands on her hips and glared at Qin Yu. "You bastard heartless man! How did I treat you? Is this how you treat me?" She looked at the Golden Crow. "You want me? Sure, fight with him. If you win, I will go with you. But if you lose, I want something from you." The Golden Crow's breathing quickened. "All right, I agree. I will give you anything you want." Little Meaty humphed. "That's what you said." She sat down. "Qin, if you joke around again, I won't joke around with you anymore." This was a naked threat. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He thought that with your strength, you could get anything you wanted with just a flick of your finger. Why go through so much trouble? He stood up and walked over. It was fine for her to be mischievous for a bit, but if she continued to be mischievous after being clearly warned, then she was just brainless. Moreover, today's situation wasn't bad at all. Although Qin Yu didn't care much about smuggling, as long as he dealt with these people properly, he could avoid more troubles in the future. Do it. Qin Yu looked at the Golden Crow, his eyes calm. This was the so-called evil you brought upon yourself. If you are so blind, then you can only suffer the consequences of your own actions. The Golden Crow roared out loud and stepped forwards. Terrifying flames broke out from its body, revealing a terrifying pale blue color. It could be imagined just what sort of heat was contained within these flames. But Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to play around with him. Since he wanted to completely erase the troubles in the smuggling squad, then establishing his prestige was necessary. Qin Yu lifted a hand. His 5 fingers spread out and pressed forwards. Puff! The flames were instantly extinguished. Like a 5-fingered mountain, it came crashing down. Bang! With a loud explosion, the earth trembled. The golden crow was smashed into the ground, blood gushing out from his nose and mouth. As the Goliath sovereign, and with the palace lantern in his hand, suppressing a barbarian was just that simple. After finishing his task, Qin Yu turned and left. All around him were stunned faces, as if he were looking at an immortal in the heavens. Chapter 1548. Immortals didn't exist, but the effect of establishing prestige was actually quite good. For instance, Zhou Dafu. In terms of acting, the only person that Qin Yu admired was Zhou Dafu. His expression was a mixture of shock, horror, disbelief, and extreme fear. Thinking about it, his thoughts were, I actually dared to scheme against that terrifying Wu Jin? I fear I'm tired of living. Then, it turned into a deep despair. The reason was simple. Since Wu Jin was invincible, his plan had become a joke. In the end, all that awaited him was death. Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to care about Zhou Dafu's thoughts. He said without turning his head, if he dares to move, he will die right now. The enraged Golden Crow tribe members immediately rooted themselves to the ground. They clenched their teeth, not daring to take half a step forwards. Qin Yu turned and sat down. He looked at the treehouse and thought, it's about time you explained your plans. Little Meaty's feet moved. She floated down from the treehouse and landed beside the giant hole in the ground. As she looked at the suppressed Golden Crow, her eyes shined. Hey, I know you haven't died. Take a breather. The Golden Crow opened his eyes. As he looked at the face in front of him, his eyes were still filled with heat and intoxication. I lost. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. Little Meaty clapped her hands and laughed. Well done. A man should keep his word. She reached out a hand and grasped it. Then I won't be polite. I will take it myself. Ah! The Golden Crow roared in pain. His body instantly tensed up. Then, his limbs seemed to be grabbed by invisible tentacles and violently pulled outwards. With a loud, crackling sound, it emitted from within the Golden Crow's body. It was unknown whether it was his bones breaking or his flesh and blood collapsing. But it was clear that this wasn't a good feeling. Pain and fear finally covered the desire in his heart. Anger appeared in his eyes. What do you want to do? Little Meaty looked at him with a strange expression. Take something. She thought to herself, why are you asking about something that you already agreed to? It was really inexplicable. Bang! Flames broke out from his body. The clothes that the Golden Crow wore were instantly burned to ashes. Little Meaty glanced at him, a look of contempt on her face. She thought that he really was just a silver spear with a wax stick. He looked good, but was actually useless. From the outside, it looked pretty good, but the price was far too low. It was far worse than that brat Qin Yu. Inexplicably, Qin Yu suddenly felt a great sense of unease. He looked up at Ruru. Although she was currently facing away from him, his intuition told him that this was definitely because of her. Save me. Kill them all. The Golden Crow howled mournfully. Red blood vessels bulged under his limbs, as if burning magma was really flowing within them. Now, they were gathering towards the heart, starting from the limbs. Kill! Save the elder! Gold Crow clan warriors let out raging roars. At this moment, the temperature of the surrounding area soared. The flames that soared into the sky dyed half the sky red like fresh blood. Qin Yu frowned. He didn't stand up. Instead, he looked across. In the next moment, the faces of those Gold Crow clan warriors, whose eyes seemed to be burning with rage, suddenly showed fear on their faces. What they withstood was an extremely terrifying suppression. Their minds trembled and the strength within their bodies directly scattered. Putong! Putong! Gold Crow clan warriors fell to the ground one after another. This scene caused those who had just regained their composure to fall into a long period of silence once more. eyes gathered on Qin Yu's body. Their eyes were filled with endless shock and disbelief. To be able to single-handedly suppress the Golden Crow proved that the Golden Crow general was tyrannical to the extreme. Even so, this scene left one's heart trembling. This was something that had been said many times before. It was the palest and most powerless thing in the world. But the Golden Crow general had used just a single look to suppress all the Gold Crow clan warriors. Did they dare to believe it? But without a doubt, this was the reality that was occurring in front of them. They couldn't believe it or not. Ruru's extraction continued. That's right. Although Qin Yu didn't know what she wanted to do, he could roughly see what her goal was. As the Emperor of the Goliaths, he had a duty and responsibility to protect his subjects and people. But this didn't include traitors and traitors. Since the Golden Crow had attacked him, there was nothing left to say. Of course, the more important reason was that the Golden Crow was seeking death. Qin Yu was prepared to give him a way out, but he had still provoked this person. Now, Qin Yu had to rely on her protection. Since Ruru had expressed her stance, he could only maintain his silence. As the saying went, he brought this upon himself. The sinful Golden Crow was in a miserable state. He had already fallen into a semi-conscious state. Blood constantly seeped out from every orifice of his head. But in the next moment, all of this blood was evaporated by the burning flames around his body. The magma that gathered from his limbs poured into his heart. Just as Qin Yu thought that in the next moment he would be dissected alive, Ruru suddenly turned around and glared at him. The meaning behind her eyes was clear. What kind of look is that? Am I such a cruel person? Qin Yu's lips twitched. If it were anyone else, it might be hard to say. But if it were her, then this matter really wouldn't be anything at all. But in the end, he wouldn't be dissected alive. Little Meaty stretched out a finger and gently flicked it on the surface of his heart, which was as red and hot as a piece of red-hot iron. Peepa, peepa. Countless cracking sounds came from the surface of the Golden Crow's body. Countless cracks began to appear on his naked body. Looking down, through every crack, one could clearly see the trembling dark red flesh and blood, like soft and delicious jelly. The semi-conscious Golden Crow fiercely opened his eyes, his body silently twitching. Starting from his heart, a thick line of fire extended upwards, passing through his chest and throat, reaching the tip of his nose and between his eyebrows. Here, the line of fire split in two, each one pouring into an eye on either side. The Golden Crow twitched even more fiercely. This feeling was probably like plucking out an eyeball and tossing it into boiling hot magma. Just imagine how it would taste. Qin Yu believed that he had seen many things in his life. To say that killing people like scything flax wasn't wrong in itself. But this was the first time he had seen such cruel methods. If the Golden Crow had a choice, he likely would have cut his own neck and committed suicide. As Qin Yu thought back to the rolling eyes just now, he was left speechless. He thought that he might as well just cut open the Golden Crow and be happy. Within the camp, everyone had just regained their composure. The pitiful screams attracted their attention, and as they saw the Golden Crow's fate, they all shivered and fell into a daze once more. Miss Ruru, was she actually so terrifying? The one with the greatest psychological contrast was Zhou Xiaoshan. He clutched his chest and plopped to the ground. This was probably dream-shattering. So it turned out that even a little fairy maiden could kill people. Moreover, her methods of killing were so cruel that it was hard to accept them. The Golden Crow finally stopped twitching. Its two eyes that had been filled with magma had turned into a solid jade-like substance. Ruru nodded with satisfaction. She reached out and grasped the air. The two eyeballs flew out on their own and fell in her hand. But the moment the eyeballs left its body, the Golden Crow seemed to have lost all of its strength and instantly turned into a pile of mud. Well, what I wanted were your eyes. Now we're even. Qin Yu suddenly frowned. A trace of vigilance rose up in his heart. In the next moment, there was a cry that came from the collapsed Golden Crow's body. It was filled with anger and cruelty. A Golden Crow flew out from the Golden Crow's body. Although this sounded strange, the scene in front of them didn't make anyone think it was funny at all. This was because the Golden Crow was massive. Its wings were 1,000 feet wide. It was like a true sun that descended upon the camp, releasing world-destroying flames. At this moment, the air began to boil, turning into invisible magma. Walala, there was a series of crashing sounds. The branches of the two heaven-supporting trees began to scramble over each other, struggling to weave a thick shade above Ruru's head, isolating her from the heat. Their leaves began to emit light like a kind of jade. As the golden crow burned them, they became even more verdant. It was clear that these two flattering trees didn't only know how to flatter and flatter others. They themselves were unusual. Walala, another shade fell on Chinyu's head. Although it couldn't compare to the thickness of Ruru's head, it still instantly cooled him down. These were indeed extraordinary trees. The golden crow angrily cried out. It flapped its wings and circled in the skies. Its eyes stubbornly stared at Ruru, as if it could feel some sort of threat from her. There was a hint of hesitation in its giant eyes. The golden crow fiercely flapped its wings, and an endless sea of fire instantly descended like a heavenly river. In the next moment, its massive body shot into the skies. So, this heaven-shaking strike wasn't to kill the enemy, but to seize the chance to escape. Chinyu looked at the golden crow that had a wingspan of over 1,000 feet and revealed a look of sympathy. Although your eyesight is good and you are decisive, since you've already come here, how could that person allow you to leave alive? At this time, Chinyu had already determined that Ruru's goal from the very start had been this golden crow. The so-called taking of the golden crow's eyes and making the process so complicated and cruel was likely to draw it here. Although the golden crow that soared into the skies and tried to flee wasn't its main body, thinking about it, Ruru had a method. In truth, Ruru's method was very simple. She threw out a bead, or, to be more precise, it was one of the golden crow's eyes. She lifted a hand and pointed a finger at the surface of the bead. With a cracking sound, cracks appeared on the bead, and it immediately shattered into pieces. Above her head, the golden crow that had spread its wings and flown far away suddenly emitted a miserable cry. In the next moment, its massive body was like a brilliant firework that exploded in all directions. It was as if there was a huge snow of fire. Ruru nodded in satisfaction. She took out another bead and pointed a finger at it. This time, the bead didn't shatter. Rather, it turned into an existence similar to a black hole. A formidable swallowing strength erupted from within, sweeping out and sweeping away all of the falling snow and fire. A cry of alarm and anger came from within the bead. The phantom of a golden crow that had shrunk countless times began to wildly fly about within the bead. But the inside of the bead seemed to have formed its own world, like an unbreakable cage. No matter how the golden crow flew about, it couldn't escape. Ruru took the bead, looked at it, and then swallowed it. Chapter 1549. The golden crow of the golden crow tribe was dead. One sentence, but it referred to two places. The half-human, half-barbarian golden crow was dead, so be it. He was not favoring the tribe anyway. But the latter was different. The reason why the golden crow tribe was so powerful and that its warriors could control the true fire of the sun was because of the golden crow totem. Although there was more than one golden crow, only the king of the golden crows was qualified to become the totem of the tribe. It was the one that little Meaty had swallowed. When she put the bead in her mouth, the golden crow totem shrieked and turned into ashes. The entire golden crow tribe was in turmoil, and a murderous intent exploded. The golden crow totem was inherited in an orderly manner. Before the previous king died, he would pass on the purest bloodline to help the new king be born. This in itself was equivalent to cutting off the inheritance of the golden crow totem. No matter what, they had to take back the bloodline of the golden crow king. For this, they would pay any price. As for the murderer, it was not difficult to find. Just as the golden crow tribe was preparing to launch a bloody revenge, a barefooted guest arrived outside the tribe. There was a hideous scar on his head, but it did not affect the warm, sun-like aura in his eyes. "Welcome, Lord Ascetic." The tribe gate opened. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe prostrated on the ground and invited him into the tribe's camp with the most respectful and noble etiquette. The camp of the Imperial smuggling team. The people of the Golden Crow tribe had already dragged the corpse of the Golden Crow away. The burning aura that filled the air had mostly dissipated, but the tense atmosphere that enveloped the camp did not dissipate. Instead, it became even more intense. A golden crow had died. A golden crow had been eaten. No matter which one it would cause a great deal of trouble. The Golden Crow tribe was one of the strongest tribes of the barbarian race, with over 100,000 warriors under its command. No matter how strong the Golden Crow tribe was, no one thought that he could fight against the revenge of the Golden Crow tribe. Now that they had entered deep into the territory of the barbarian race, the fate of their team could already be predicted. Many gazes gathered on the two trees. Their eyes were filled with worry and fear, but there was also a hint of anticipation. It would be a lie to say that they did not feel any resentment. But as mentioned before, there were no immortals, but the effect of establishing one's might was quite good. After witnessing how Jin Wu General suppressed those Gold Crow clan people, these vicious smugglers were now filled with awe and fear. Even if he was dissatisfied, he could only keep it in his heart, not daring to show it. Everyone's eyes turned towards the treehouse. Qin Yu looked at little Meaty across from him and couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows. "So, you really ate the Gold Crow, tribe's Golden Crow?" Little Meat nodded. "It came to me on its own. I didn't provoke it on my own." As she spoke, she blinked her eyes innocently. "Qin Yu, you saw it with your own eyes. It was that Golden Crow that spat fire at me first. You have to testify for me." Qin Yu nearly choked to death. Not to mention that the Golden Crow was spitting fire in order to escape. It was just that it was too slow and was caught and eaten by you. Even if it really attacked first and provoked you, what's the use of me testifying? Would the Gold Crow clan believe it? Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu looked at her and said, "You have to take responsibility. Everything was caused by Little Meat." Of course, he had to take responsibility. Little Meat nodded with a relaxed face. "Of course I will. If the Gold Crow clan is not satisfied, just come and find me." Qin Yu smiled bitterly. Different from what the others in the campsite were thinking, he wasn't worried about the revenge from the Gold Crow clan at all. On the contrary, he was worried about the safety of the Gold Crow clan. Looking at Little Meat's face, it seemed that she didn't care about the Gold Crow clan at all. But deep down, she probably couldn't wait for the Gold Crow clan to come to them. Then, she would have a reason and motive to eat to her heart's content. "Stop. Put away your thoughts. You can't touch the Gold Crow clan anymore." Qin Yu warned her seriously. "Unless you're ready to give up this identity and leave as soon as possible." In front of him, Little Meat thought for a while, then lifted the chicken overlord in her arms and rubbed it with her hands. She pouted, extremely dissatisfied. She understood Qin Yu's warning. Little Meat's identity was a girl from the Devil Sect. The methods she had displayed so far were already astonishing. If she destroyed the entire Gold Crow clan, wouldn't that be telling everyone that there was a problem with her body? The people of the Western Wasteland weren't blind or deaf. They would definitely react. At that time, her vacation would end early. In a pair of white and tender hands, a certain chicken overlord that had been kneaded into 80 different positions widened its eyes. Its face was filled with innocence, and it wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It thought to itself, "Just who did I provoke? Why did such a disaster suddenly come flying at me?" Qin Yu said, "It's good that you understand. So, leave the following matters to me." As he spoke to her, he couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows. Although he said he would handle it, the truth was that even now, Qin Yu still hadn't thought of what he would do. After such a major event had occurred, the Gold Crow clan would definitely respond. Once they arrived, he would make a decision based on the situation. This was likely to be the first time that the new barbarian emperor had established contact with his clansmen. But Qin Yu wasn't sure what the consequences would be. The great shaman bewildering in the mind was the best example. Not everyone in the barbarian race hoped that a new emperor would appear. If a single mistake were to occur and Qin Yu's identity was revealed, then he feared he would have to flee to the ends of the world. Of course, with the one in Meaty's body, his safety was guaranteed. But the image of a golden general that he had painstakingly built up would vanish into thin air. This would inevitably be a fatal blow to Qin Yu's plans. His plan to borrow the strength of the Western Wasteland to resist that race would also be completely shattered. The consequences would be severe. He had no choice but to be cautious. After warning Meaty a few more times not to cause any more trouble, Qin Yu stood up and left. This matter of freeloading could only be temporarily suspended. He landed on the ground and turned to look at the treehouse. His eyebrows furrowed for a moment before he composed himself. A mysterious existence hidden in space-time would never suddenly provoke trouble for no reason. If Meaty wanted to eat the Golden Crow clan, then she must have her own reasons. It definitely wasn't, as she said, she had been a bit greedy recently. So, Qin Yu didn't stop her and chose to acquiesce. As he thought about how Meaty had been in a deep slumber ever since the treehouse was built, a sharp light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. If things were really as he thought, then even if he stirred up a great deal of trouble because of swallowing the Golden Crow clan, it would still be worth it. As Qin Yu was silently thinking, there was a loud thud in front of him. Zhou Dafu, who was missing several teeth, fell to his knees. Lord marinated. If you want to eat, then you have to rub. If you want to bite, then you have to scrape. If you want to eat, then you have to eat. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows and looked at him. Zhou Dafu's body trembled. He quickly opened his mouth and pointed at his missing teeth, his eyes filled with tears. Qin Yu humphed. It hasn't come to this. I'll give you one last chance. Speak properly. Zhou Dafu cried out, and tears streamed down his face. With a loud thud, his head smashed into the ground, leaving a large dent in it. Thank you, General, for sparing me. Thank you, General. Qin Yu faintly smiled at him. Zhou Dafu, are you so sure that I won't kill you? Zhou Dafu's face was filled with awe and trepidation. If General wants to kill me, it would be easier than pinching a bug to death. But as long as I live, I will do everything in my power to serve you. Qin Yu sneered and walked away. Zhou Dafu was stunned for a moment. Then, wild joy gushed out from his eyes, and he hurried to follow. After the Golden Crow was killed, he knew that his previous plan was nothing more than a joke. Since he couldn't kill Qin Yu, his only choice was to cling on to Qin Yu's thigh. Perhaps that would give him a chance to live. So, he waited beneath the treehouse. So he deliberately let out a few loose teeth. So he borrowed Qin Yu's words to kneel down and thank him. But all of this was Zhou Dafu's wishful thinking. He was just probing Qin Yu. Life or death. It all depended on Qin Yu's thoughts. Perhaps in the next moment, the gates of hell would open and he would be welcomed in to settle down. But this time, with a cold cough, Zhou Dafu felt completely at ease. As he thought, General Jin Wu didn't want to kill him. Otherwise, just as he said just now, killing him would be as easy as crushing a bug. There would be no need to wait until now. Qin Yu suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked at Zhou Dafu, who was filled with joy and respect. It looks like you are a smart person. I like smart people. You can continue living. Zhou Dafu fell to his knees. I pledge my life to the general. There was nothing else to say, but this declaration was the most appropriate one at this time. Qin Yu waved his hand. Leave. Tell the others that there is no need to panic. He walked away. Zhou Dafu stood up. Looking at Qin Yu's fading back, his eyes flashed and the joy in them grew. He believed that in this matter, there was no need for General Jin Wu to bluff. Of course, what was more important was that Zhou Dafu believed in his own eyes. When he said, "There is no need to panic," General Jin Wu's mood was calm, and his eyes were as deep and unfathomable as the deep sea. This absolutely wasn't something that could be faked. In other words, he really did have confidence. There was no need to panic. Naturally, there was no need to panic. If so, then the revenge of the Golden Crow tribe wouldn't be a problem. General, he really was a thick thigh that couldn't be thicker. In the border army camp, and even the great figures of the imperial capital, it was likely that they all underestimated the strength he possessed. Zhou Dafu turned and left. Soon, he gathered several trusted subordinates. After saying a few words, everyone dispersed. Soon, the tense atmosphere in the camp quietly eased. It was impossible to completely resolve it, but at the very least, a semblance of calm was restored. At this time, everyone only had a single thought in their minds. Just what gave the general such confidence? Golden Crow Tribe. He waved his attendants away. In the patriarch's tent, there was only him and Ku Xiu left. The air was quiet. The patriarch's face revealed an awkward and hesitant expression. Ku Xiu had a fierce scar on his head and a warm expression in his eyes. He looked at the frowning patriarch and slowly said, "I know the importance of the Golden Crow Totem. Patriarch, please rest assured that no matter what the result is, I will resolve this matter for your honorable tribe." The patriarch let out a long breath. After obtaining the promise he wanted, he finally smiled. "Thank you, Lord Ku Xiu. Then, I will leave this matter to you. My tribe will cooperate fully." Ku Xiu stood up. "Thank you, Patriarch." He turned and walked out. To avoid any accidents, the fewer people who know about this, the better. Half a day later, a troop quietly left the Golden Crow tribe. It was not a large troop, but they were the most trusted subordinates of the Golden Crow tribe's patriarch. The leader was even his most valued son. Turning around and glancing at the carriage, the young master of the Golden Crow tribe thought of his father's solemn warning before he left. Listen to Lord Ku Xiu's orders. To be honest, he was a bit confused. Even though Ku Xiu had a noble status and was the most powerful force of the barbarian race, as the strongest tribe of the barbarian race, the Golden Crow tribe should not be so respectful in front of Ku Xiu. But since he was valued by the patriarch of the Golden Crow tribe, it was because he was cautious and intelligent. His father did not explain, but the more he did so, the more it showed that there was something hidden. All he needed to do was to obey. Along the way, the troop hid their identities and did not alarm the other tribes. But in fact, the killing of the Golden Crow tribe had already alarmed the 4 tribes. There were too many eyes on this place. No matter how cautious and low-key the troop was, it was hard to avoid being discovered. The Ku Xiu's calm voice came from the carriage. "No need to pay attention to it. Just keep going." As the voice faded, a faintly discernible sense of peace and tranquility was released from the carriage. In the darkness, the expressions of the people who were watching the troop changed slightly when they sensed this sense of peace. Silhouettes walked out from their hiding places, bowed, turned around, and left. Ku Xiu, especially a Ku Xiu with such a pure sense of peace, had an extremely high status in the barbarian race. But there was one thing that no one could understand. Why would such a powerful Ku Xiu intervene in the matter of the Golden Crow tribe? Sensing the sense of peace released from the carriage, the young master of the Golden Crow tribe was secretly shocked. His tone became even more respectful. Finally, they had arrived. The young master of the Golden Crow tribe bowed. "Lord Ku Xiu, the camp of the Desolate Man is in front of us." The door of the carriage was pushed open. The Ku Xiu, with a scar on his head, walked out and nodded slightly. "Follow me." He had contacted the Desolate Man using the name of the Golden Crow tribe, so it was reasonable to bring him along. The young master of the Golden Crow tribe hurriedly nodded and followed behind. Thinking for a moment, his thoughts stirred. He released a trace of the Golden Crow's aura from his body. The Ku Xiu turned his head and looked at him. In his warm eyes, there was a trace of appreciation. The young master of the Golden Crow tribe was excited. Shwa, shwa. 2 figures blocked their path. The Ku Xiu raised a palm. "You too. I have come from the Golden Crow tribe. I would like to see General Jean." Anticipation appeared in the depths of his eyes. Strictly speaking, he had already interacted with this General Jean twice, but they had never officially met. He wanted to know just what relationship this person had with the new barbarian emperor. The Ku Xiu was gentle and polite, but that didn't mean that he had restrained his aura. On the contrary, at this moment he was like a boundless lake. He was quiet and deep, and he naturally released an aura that caused one to feel awe. Across from him, 2 Western wasteland cultivators who were standing guard took a deep breath and bowed. "Lord Ku Xiu, there is no need to be so polite. Please follow us." In the darkness, there were some sounds. Other cultivators had already rushed back to the camp to report. "I'll have to trouble you." The Kushio had a calm expression. He saw all of this, but he didn't care. Soon, the smugglers' camp that had calmed down began to panic once more. The Kushio had arrived. As smugglers who traveled the borders of the Western Wasteland and barbarian territory all year round, they had a deep understanding of the barbarians. They certainly knew what the Kushio represented. In addition to their noble status, they also represented extremely powerful cultivation and strength. Against the Kushio, could the general win? Even if he could, the barbarian Kushio was a separate entity. Provoking one was the same as provoking all of them. Who could withstand this? Chapter 1550. Just as everyone was thinking and feeling more and more hopeless, two people walked in from outside the camp. Ascetic Cultivator's aura could be recognized at a glance. Everyone subconsciously showed respect and bowed slightly. Then, they suddenly realized that the general had not appeared yet. Although the Western Wasteland and the barbarian race had been enemies for generations, the respect for the strong surpassed the iron law of hatred. The general's actions were extremely rude and could possibly anger the other party. Zhou Dafu's figure appeared in everyone's sight. His face was slightly pale, and his forehead was covered in sweat. He quickly walked up and bowed. "Lord Ascetic Cultivator, the general invites you to the tent to talk." As he spoke, he tried his best to remain calm, but his voice was still trembling. Ascetic Cultivator nodded calmly. "All right." He turned and bowed to the young master of the Golden Crow tribe. "Young master, please wait here for me." The young master hurriedly nodded. Zhou Dafu's heart relaxed slightly. Then, he felt proud of General Jin Wu's strength. Ascetic Cultivator, a powerful barbarian cultivator, was so restrained and patient in front of General Jin Wu. Zhou Dafu coughed and stood up, gesturing. "Lord Ascetic Cultivator, please follow me." His words and actions were much more relaxed than before. Within the camp, a group of Western Wasteland cultivators and ferocious smugglers couldn't help but widen their eyes when they saw this. Then their hearts suddenly calmed down. Ascetic Cultivator followed behind Zhou Dafu. At this moment, he frowned as if sensing something. He turned and looked at the two trees at the edge of the camp. Zhou Dafu's eyes flickered and he smiled. "That place is the residence of my family's madam. These two ancient trees are the madam's servants." She was the only woman beside General Jin Wu, even though she didn't have an official title. But after seeing Little Meaty's methods, he didn't mind flattering her. Ascetic Cultivator nodded and took a deep breath. His face didn't change, but his heart was filled with anticipation. They arrived at the tent. Zhou Dafu bowed. "Lord Ascetic Cultivator, the general is waiting for you in the tent." Ascetic Cultivator returned the bow and stepped forward, entering the tent. At first glance, he saw the young man sitting on the main seat. Bitter Cultivator Prajna greets General Jin. He took a step forward, raised his palm, and cupped his hands in greeting. Looking into the tent and at the ascetic standing in front of him, Qin Yu smiled and his eyes lit up with joy. His previous hesitation and uneasiness vanished into thin air after seeing this person. Thinking for a moment, Qin Yu sat still and accepted the ascetic cultivator's bow. Then he cupped his hands together and said, "Grandmaster Prajna, we meet again." With these words, the laws of space and time within the scope of the tent distorted at the same time, completely isolating the inside from the outside world. Hanya's warm eyes suddenly brightened. She looked up at Qin Yu, a look of understanding in her eyes. It turns out that the previous two times were both deliberate actions by the general to lead me to him. At that moment, he could basically be certain that the person before him had an incredibly close relationship with the new Berserker Emperor. Overjoyed, she immediately bowed once more. "General, I beseech you to tell me where you met my tribe." Before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Qin Yu. "Grandmaster Hanya, there is nothing that cannot be said to others, but there are some words that cannot be said." Hanya's expression turned cold. She bowed. "General is right. I was impulsive in a moment. please don't blame me. Qin Yu smiled. Grandmaster is too serious. Please sit down. Hanya sat down. She looked at Qin Yu, and her thoughts stirred. The matter with the Golden Crow tribe, was it the general's intention to lead me here? Qin Yu shook his head. At the start, I didn't think things would reach this point, but the Golden Crow tribe's Golden Crow elder ignored my good intentions and ended up in this situation. After a pause, he continued to say, in addition, I didn't know that Grandmaster Hanya would appear here. I was hesitating whether or not I should come into contact with the people from the Golden Crow tribe. Hanya was a smart person. Her complexion changed. General, if there's something you need, there's no harm in speaking frankly. Qin Yu lifted a hand and revealed a ring on his finger. When I left the border army camp, the projection of a half-emperor appeared and personally handed it to me. A half-emperor existence resonated with the heavens and earth. They couldn't be called out by name, otherwise they would sense something. Hanya's complexion changed once more. A half-emperor of the desolate was equal to a great shaman of the barbarian race. Their strength and boundary were the peak of the world. Her eyes fell on the ring, and her expression became even more solemn. She waited for Qin Yu to continue speaking. This ring is a spatial magic tool. There are many materials placed inside that can be used to construct a special array formation. Its name is the Boundary Breaking Token. Immediately, Qin Yu told the cultivator in front of him everything he knew about the Boundary Breaking Token. A terrifying spatial array formation. It could cause space to explode, forming terrifying waves of space that could sweep away all. Hanya revealed a look of anger. It was clear that this was the first time she learned that the Western Wasteland had been plotting such a terrifying plan for so many years. Once they succeeded, they would surely severely wound the barbarians. There was even a chance that they would be sent into the abyss. Hanya took a deep breath. She bowed. Thank you, General, for informing the barbarians of this matter. Otherwise, there would have been a great calamity for my people. Qin Yu waved his hand. It is my duty, so there is no need for Grandmaster to thank me. But the crux of the matter is that I have the mission of arranging the Boundary Breaking Token. Only by completing this matter can I obtain further trust. He paused for a moment. In order to increase the persuasiveness of his words, he said, this is also the attitude that Grandmaster believes in. Hanya didn't doubt Qin Yu's words. Even though she couldn't figure out why the barbarian sovereign would choose this desolate general to be his envoy after he arrived. Qin Yu suddenly said, Grandmaster, do you know the origin of the Western Wasteland Army's Hongshan family? Hanya frowned. She slowly said, the Hongshan family is a traitor of my barbarian race. This is a shame that the ascetic cultivation lineage must wash away. This news surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. He knew that the Hongshan family was a barbarian race, but he never imagined that they were actually a traitor. No wonder when Qin Yu deliberately released his aura and was detected by Hanya, he didn't hesitate to pay any price to kill Yuan Gu. His thoughts raced. Qin Yu's expression remained calm, as if everything was within his grasp. He took a deep breath and his aura changed. An ancient and tyrannical aura was released from his body. Hanya's eyes widened. After a moment of silence, she bowed and said, So General was a powerhouse of my barbarian race. At this moment, she was thoroughly enlightened. Everything that had happened had been a plan made by the great barbarian sovereign. He had deliberately arranged for this barbarian powerhouse to enter the Western Wasteland and imitate the betrayal of the Hongshan family in the past to obtain the trust of the Western Wasteland Great Emperor. Step by step, he had pushed General Jinwu to rise, becoming the deepest chess piece that the barbarians had placed in the Western Wasteland. Although he didn't know what His Majesty's true intentions were, there was no doubt that he was playing a massive game of chess. General Jinwu, Hongshan family. Hanya's heart was suddenly filled with excitement. She suddenly felt that perhaps the shame that the ascetic cultivation lineage wanted to wash away might be erased. Qin Yu said, Concerning my identity, I asked Grandmaster to keep it a secret. After Hanya nodded, he continued to say, So, what is placed in front of me now is a difficult problem. If I continue to lay down the world-breaking token, it is likely that it will endanger the barbarians. But if I give up, it will ruin my original plan. Hanya looked into Qin Yu's eyes and solemnly said, I understand General's meaning. I ask you to wait a moment. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes. Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. At this moment, he could feel an incomparably strange divine sense fluctuation coming from Hanya's body. It was weak and mysterious, like some sort of special resonance technique. It could cross a great distance and communicate with a specific target. Thinking back to when Zhou Dafu mentioned that the barbarians were a nest, Qin Yu understood. Behind Hanya was the true great figure of the barbarians. He could make the final decision regarding the world-breaking token. To Qin Yu, this was the best result. With the participation of the great figures of the barbarians, he would know what to do next. After a long time, the divine sense fluctuation coming from Hanya's body dissipated. He opened his eyes, his complexion pale. It was clear that this method of communication was a great burden to him. Looking at Qin Yu, Hanya smiled. General, you can continue to lay down the world-breaking token. As long as you let us know the location ahead of time, we can do so immediately. Qin Yu said, of course. As for constructing the world-breaking token, I will need your cooperation. But he looked over, an awkward expression on his face. Hanya said, General, rest assured that we can guarantee that this matter will not be discovered by the barbarians, nor will it threaten you. It was indeed easy to speak with a smart person. Qin Yu smiled. If so, then I can rest assured. Hanya lifted a hand. A pearl-sized ball of light slowly condensed at her fingertips. General, this is a divine sense resonance technique of my lineage. I used this technique just now to contact Teacher. As Hanya spoke to hear, a puzzled look appeared in her eyes. Teacher ordered me to pass this technique to you. At a time when you need it, you can use it to contact my teacher. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. I wonder who Grandmaster Hanya's teacher is? Hanya placed her palms in front of her. She respectfully bowed and said, My teacher is the only great shaman of the Western barbarians today, the great shaman of Meng Mountain. Great shaman. As the barbarian sovereign, Qin Yu certainly knew what sort of existence a great shaman was. In terms of status and strength, they were comparable to the barbarian half-step sovereign realm. In this world, they were the most powerful cultivators. In the past, the great shaman of the mine, in order to subdue the heaven and earth spirit embryo at the bottom of the mine, had damaged his own boundary and cultivation. In the end, he had perished. But before that, he had used a curse ritual to erase all traces of his existence. Otherwise, if the Western barbarians knew that a barbarian great shaman had perished in the mine, they would have spared no cost to find the secrets hidden within. If so, then the heaven and earth spirit embryo should have already been discovered and taken away by the Western barbarians. It was impossible for it to remain here until today. Great Shaman of Meng Mountain. This was the name of the second great shaman that Qin Yu knew of. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Thank you, great shaman of Meng Mountain. After carefully sensing the ball of light, he found that there was nothing wrong with it. Qin Yu grasped forward, and the ball of light flew into his hand. The moment it touched his flesh and blood, it melted into him and disappeared. In the next moment, a strange method of using divine sense appeared in his mind. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. Whether it was Hanya in front of him or the great shaman of Meng Mountain behind him, they were both trustworthy. Before this, he had exposed his aura twice, and yet no problems had appeared. This was the best evidence. Since the other party was trustworthy, then this divine sense manipulation technique was the same as having another life-saving card in Qin Yu's hand. No one would complain about having too many of these things. Grandmaster Hanya, regarding the matter of the Golden Crow tribe, you and I need to think of a more reliable reason so that the outside world will believe us. That isn't difficult. Since the Western barbarians want to use you as a chess piece in their territory, then let's do as they wish. Qin Yu thought for a moment. He smiled. Good. Hanya frowned. She bitterly smiled. I just remembered that there is another problem that needs to be resolved. She looked at Qin Yu. The Golden Crow tribe's totem, the Golden Crow, was killed by the general's wife, causing the Golden Crow tribe's totem bloodline to be severed. This matter involves the foundation of the Golden Crow tribe. If we cannot resolve it, it will be difficult for them to cooperate. Qin Yu revealed a strange expression, but before he could speak, a meaty voice echoed out from the tent. I will resolve this matter. Space shook and a round bead appeared. It was crimson, as if endless magma had been poured into it. This was the one she swallowed in the past. But the Golden Crow within had already disappeared without a trace. If I hand it over to the Golden Crow tribe, they will naturally be satisfied. They might even thank me for eating that old Golden Crow. General's wife. Humph. This title was simply preposterous. Chapter 1551. Ascetic Xiao came and left, bringing the Golden Crow tribe young master with him. He didn't wave his sleeves, nor did he take away a single cloud. No one knew what happened in the tent, but without a doubt, there was a high chance that the general had settled this great problem. This could be confirmed by how the general personally saw Ascetic Xiao out of the tent before he left. In the camp, General Jin's prestige had reached its peak at this moment. Zhou Dafu was overjoyed, but he couldn't help but furrow his eyebrows. He was good at observing people and felt that there was a hint of intimacy and respect in Ascetic Xiao's attitude. He was probably mistaken. What kind of status did Ascetic Xiao have in the barbarian race? Even if General Jin could settle the Golden Crow tribe matter, he still wouldn't be respected. No matter what, they had escaped a calamity. This was something worth celebrating. Qin Yu was in a good mood. The sudden appearance of Ascetic Xiao had solved a problem that had been troubling him for a long time, and he had obtained an extra card in his hand. Although it was best if he didn't have to use a life-saving card. In this world, no one knew which would come sooner, accidents or tomorrow. Only by being prepared could one be safe. He turned and returned to his tent. After taking several steps, he turned his head and looked towards the treehouse. Solving the problem of the Golden Crow tribe could also be considered erasing some troubles for this person. Eating and drinking shouldn't be too much, right? Cough. Qin Yu turned and ran straight towards the treehouse. The Golden Crow tribe troops smoothly returned to their camp. Because of the strong suppression from the chief, the fires of vengeance had been temporarily suppressed. But now, they could clearly feel the restlessness and violence in the air. The Golden Crow totem had been killed. This matter had to be resolved, otherwise the powerful Golden Crow tribe was no different from a tree without roots. They were destined to wither away. The chief personally came out and bowed. Grandmaster Bo Ri, you've returned. The young chief glanced over and shook his head. He really didn't know what Ascetic Xiao and General Jin had talked about in the tent. After the two of them had a secret discussion, they brought their men back. He was also confused. Bo Ri faintly smiled. She pretended not to notice the exchange between father and son. Chief, I asked that all the elders of the tribe gather together. The patriarch's eyes lit up. He raised his head and smiled. Good. He turned around and said, pass down my order. Tell all the elders to stop what they are doing and come to my tent. The young clan leader acknowledged respectfully, turned around, and left in a hurry. The patriarch reached out his hand. Grandmaster Hanya, please wait a moment. Soon, all the elders of the Gold Crow clan, except for one who was in closed-door training and two who were out on errands, had gathered in the tent. Their faces were solemn, their eyes were cold, and their bodies were surrounded by killing intent. At this moment, their gazes all fell on Bo Ri. Previously, when the tribe was about to take revenge, he had interfered. Now that 2 days had passed, of course, he had to give an explanation. With the power of the Gold Crow clan, even if the Gold Crow clan had been cultivating hard, they still had to show enough respect. Cough. The patriarch coughed lightly and said in a deep voice, Great Master Bo Ri has come from afar and has troubled himself with our clan's matters. Don't be impudent and apologize to Great Master Bo Ri. The looks of the group of Gold Crow clan elders changed slightly, and they restrained their power vibrations. One of them stood up and bowed. Great Master, we didn't mean to offend you, but the death of our totem golden crow is related to the foundation of our clan. Please understand. Bo-ri smiled. Elders, no need to be so polite. Please rise. His eyes swept across everyone in the tent. Today, I asked the patriarch to gather everyone here to announce that the Desolate Man smuggling team has already given compensation. I ask everyone to verify it and completely put an end to the grudge. He lifted his hand. Light surged in his palm, and a red bead appeared. Although this wasn't the first time he had seen this bead in his palm, Bo-ri's eyes still revealed a bit of surprise. With his eyesight, he could see the origin of this bead, but this wasn't important. The barbarian people had many crueler methods than this. The half-human, half-barbarian golden crow had offended His Majesty's messenger, and had even offended the mysterious madam. To be able to end this matter with his death, in Bo-ri's eyes, the Gold Crow clan had taken advantage of him. Not to mention that he had already investigated the use of this bead. It was enough to satisfy the Gold Crow clan, and this was also the main reason why he said that they had taken advantage of him. The patriarch's eyes burst with a bright light. He suddenly stood up and stared at the bead in Bo-ri's hand. Feeling the aura release from this bead, his breathing gradually became heavy. Great Master, is this really the compensation for our clan? Bo-ri said, That's right. The Desolate Man asked me to bring this back. If the patriarch has no objections, then the grudge between us will be written off. Good. The patriarch gave a low shout, his eyes fixed on the bead. Bo-ri smiled. With a thought, the bead flew over. The Golden Crow clan patriarch hurriedly caught it with both hands, carefully holding it as if it was a treasure. As the bead fell into his hand, he could feel it more clearly. He had already confirmed that it was indeed as he had sensed before. No, to be exact, it was even purer and stronger than he had expected. Taking a deep breath, the Gold Crow clan patriarch clenched the bead and bowed respectfully. Kuta, on behalf of all our clansmen, thank you, Great Master Bo-ri, for bringing back a new totem bloodline for our clan. He stood up, glanced at the crowd, and raised the bead. Soon, our Gold Crow clan will give birth to an even more powerful totem Gold Crow. We agree to the Desolate Man's conditions. From now on, the grudge between us will be written off. No one can pursue it anymore. After seeing the bead, the Gold Crow clan elders, who had already expected this, all showed joy on their faces. They stood up and bowed to Bo-ri, showing that they had no objections. Bo-ri smiled and nodded. Patriarch, I can help your Gold Crow clan to complete the bloodline inheritance. The patriarch's smile grew wider. Thank you, Great Master. With her help, this matter would be even more foolproof. One day later, in the Gold Crow clan's campsite, in a huge valley. Inside the valley, raging flames covered the sky. The scorching heat twisted the air, seeming to burn everything into ashes. Hundreds of gold crows of different sizes spread their wings and shuttled through the sea of flames. They circled around a 10 feet wide crimson fire egg. The surface of this fire egg was covered with countless mysterious and unfathomable patterns. From time to time, faint halos would flash across it, interfering with the flow of the flames in the valley, causing them to expand or contract. Cawing sounds came from the beaks of all the gold crows. They retracted their wings and landed on the ground, prostrating towards the fire egg to show their respect and submission. At this moment, the Gold Crow clan's new Gold Crow totem was born. It was also the new king of the Gold Crow clan. Bo-ri opened her eyes. The calm and mysterious aura around her slowly dissipated. She stood up and bowed to the patriarch. Congratulations. The bloodline inheritance went smoothly. When the totem breaks out of its shell, the strength of the Gold Crow clan will skyrocket. The patriarch bowed respectfully. Thank you, Great Master. Beside him, the group of Gold Crow clan elders also bowed respectfully. They finally understood why the patriarch had always been so respectful towards this Gold Crow clan elder. It turned out that he came from the temple on the mountain. Only the Gold Crow clan elder could possess such a pure divinity aura. As they realized this and thought back to the resentment they had felt before, the elders panicked. They thought that they had been extremely rude and impudent. Luckily, Grandmaster Bo-Ri had no intention of arguing with them. Otherwise, blaspheming the Holy Land would be enough for them to commit suicide. Great Master, please go and rest first. I will take care of the totem and pay a visit later. Bo-Ri nodded. All right. She left under the reverent and respectful gazes of the crowd. Humph. The patriarch coldly sneered. Do you now know who Grandmaster Bo-Ri is? Before, when I stopped you from taking revenge, who dared to object? The elders' complexions darkened. Several of them had embarrassed expressions. To be reprimanded in front of their faces was a great loss of face. But in this situation, they were unable to refute. Patriarch is wise. It was us who had eyes but failed to see and failed to recognize Mount Tai's true face. An elder bitterly smiled. After borrowing the prestige of the Holy Land to suppress the elders, the patriarch knew when to stop and didn't continue to take advantage of the situation. I will go and pay a visit to Grandmaster Bo-Ri. All of you stay here to look after the totem. It concerns the future of my tribe, and there cannot be any accidents. Yes, Patriarch. 2 days later, the people of the Gold Crow clan arrived at the Forsaken Mortal Camp for the third time. Unlike before, this time, they were very respectful, shocking the smugglers. The young Patriarch entered the tent and respectfully bowed. Gold Crow clan's coolly greets General Jean. Qin Yu said, Young Patriarch, please rise. He drummed his fingers on the table, asking a question he already knew the answer to. For what matter has young Patriarch come here today? Ku Li said, In the name of my father, the Patriarch of the Gold Crow clan, Ku Da, I have come to invite General Jean to my tribe to participate in the celebration of the birth of the totem. Good, I agree. Qin Yu nodded, a smile on his face. Everything was going according to plan. Hanya was indeed reliable. Ku handed out the invitation with both hands and said that someone would come to invite him before the ceremony. He bowed and left. Soon, the entire campsite was filled with the news that General Ji was invited by the Gold Crow clan to attend the ceremony for the birth of the new totem. No one suspected that there was a conspiracy behind this. That was because they knew very well that totem importance to a barbarian tribe. The Gold Crow clan would never cause any trouble during the ceremony. They wouldn't even allow any accident to happen. Otherwise, they would become the mortal enemies of the Gold Crow clan. Being invited was a form of respect in itself. Only those who were trustworthy and had strength had the qualifications to do so. Jihao had killed their elders, eaten their totems, and now he was invited by the Gold Crow clan to attend the ceremony for the birth of a new totem. How could such a ridiculous thing happen in this world? Widen my knowledge. Widen my knowledge. The group of ferocious smugglers looked at the tent and subconsciously showed deep respect. In this world, there was no such thing as a truly unreasonable trick. The more ridiculous the trick, the more powerful one was. After all the rules in the world were based on the size of one's fist. Zhou Dafu's face blushed slightly, and his heart was filled with emotions. Once again, he confirmed one thing. General Ji was indeed a big thigh. As long as he held on to him tightly, those powerful people in the capital, who were used to eating fish, wouldn't be able to do anything to him. For the first time, Zhou Dafu believed that he could continue to live. Long live General! The smuggling business in the campsite returned to normal. The Gold Crow clan incident was over. General Ji was invited to attend the ceremony for the birth of the new totem. The news had already spread in all barbarian clans. The most direct result was that the following transactions were extremely smooth. No barbarian clans asked for a learning match again, but most of them clearly expressed that they wanted to meet General Ji. Zhou Dafu calmly declined all requests for a meeting. The reason was that General Ji was in closed-door training and couldn't be disturbed by the outside world. After the Gold Crow clan incident, Jihao had confirmed General Ji's quality. At the moment, he was full of confidence. Facing powerful barbarian clans, he was neither servile nor overbearing. He finally had the demeanor of someone who was in charge of smuggling matters. and his performance fell into the eyes of many strong barbarian clans. It made them feel that General G of the Western Wasteland was unfathomably deep. Otherwise, how could a mere Jodafu have such guts? This was a virtuous cycle. On one hand, the transactions became increasingly smooth, and on the other hand, General G's reputation became increasingly resounding amongst the barbarian clans. There were even small rumors that he was a peerless powerhouse amongst the barbarian clans, and that he possessed methods comparable to a great shaman. That was why he was able to suppress everything and force the Gold Crow clan to calm down. But in reality, the only thing that General G's reputation was becoming more and more resounding was eat, eat, eat. Drink, drink, drink. Of course, he was rubbing. Little Meaty sneered again and again, her eyes filled with even more disdain. But she didn't stop his increasingly aggressive behavior. After swallowing the Golden Crow, she was much more spirited and didn't spend too much time sleeping. This made Qin Yu feel gratified. After personally experiencing the benefits of having Little Meaty by his side, he didn't want her to leave. If he had a choice, Qin Yu hoped that he could maintain the current situation. But it was clear that while his imagination was beautiful, reality was cruel to the extreme. When Qin Yu walked up to the treehouse once more, he felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. If you keep eating and drinking, do you believe that once you fall asleep, you won't be able to wake up again? Hiss! If someone else were to say these words, Qin Yu definitely wouldn't believe them. But Little Meaty had personally said them. Looking at her complexion, Qin Yu seriously thought about it, and then he turned and walked away. In fact, after repeatedly rubbing and eating, he had also sensed some changes within his body. Simply put, his strength had risen too quickly to the point that it had gone beyond his control, or to be more precise, he had lost control. It was like the strength that had been eaten into his body wanted to give birth to its own will and break free from Qin Yu's control. This was likely what Meaty meant. Returning to his tent, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. After thinking about it again and again, he began to understand his current situation. Increasing one's strength was certainly something that all cultivators in the world yearned for, even in their dreams. But sometimes, if one increased their strength too quickly and exceeded their limits, accidents would occur. If one couldn't control their own strength, then the more they obtained, the greater the hidden dangers would be. Closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, Qin Yu's mind became one. Little Meaty stopped him from rubbing and eating, but she didn't say that she would never let him go. Once he erased the hidden dangers in his body, he would naturally be able to go again. No one knew how long this person would be able to stay in this world. He certainly couldn't waste a single chance to rub and eat. In the blink of an eye, over 10 days passed. Just as Qin Yu felt that he had nearly finished controlling the strength within his body, the Golden Crow tribe's celebration had arrived. Chapter 1552. Qin Yu impatiently wanted to continue eating and drinking, but before he could carry out his plan, he was forced to give up. One had to be trustworthy. If he agreed to something, he had to do it. Of course, the most important reason was that according to Qin Yu's previous agreement with Hanya, the first boundary-breaking command he set up should be in the Golden Crow tribe. Time was tight. He had to leave immediately. "I'll go with you." Little Meaty didn't say why, and Qin Yu didn't ask. He nodded in agreement. Although there shouldn't be any dangers on this trip to the Golden Crow tribe, how could there be absolute safety in this world? To Qin Yu, with Little Meaty by his side, his safety was guaranteed. There was no reason to refuse. Zhou Dafu took the initiative to express his desire to follow the general and serve him. Qin Yu flatly refused without even thinking about it. This fellow's eyes were extremely sharp. If he followed by his side and discovered something he shouldn't know, he might even be silenced. Not only would it be troublesome, but it would also be a waste of Qin Yu's efforts to beat him up. Ignoring Zhou Dafu's resentful eyes, Qin Yu walked in front and Little Meaty followed. The two of them boarded the carriage sent by the Golden Crow tribe. "Let's go." The team turned around and headed straight towards the Golden Crow tribe. Within the carriage, Qin Yu glanced at Little Meaty who was calmly looking out the window. In the camp, she was extremely bold and unrestrained. It was rare for her to be so quiet. Chinyu looked at the side of her face and suddenly felt that this girl's current appearance was also quite beautiful. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, his complexion changed and he wiped it away. Across from him, little Meaty turned her head, a faint smile on her face. Chinyu, you are quite bold. Don't forget the warning I gave you before. Chinyu coughed. During this time, he had come to freeload to eat and drink and had suffered her taunts and ridicule. Disregarding everything else, when facing little Meaty, Chinyu felt that his skin was much thicker than before. His expression didn't change, as if he hadn't heard her taunts. This time, I have some matters to attend to in the Golden Crow tribe. Don't stir up any more trouble. Little Meaty curled her lips and rolled her eyes. I know. I'm going this time to watch the fun. I won't do anything. Chinyu nodded, his expression calm. He sneered inwardly. As if I'd believe you. If you didn't have a purpose, would you be willing to come out of the treehouse? Look at how lazy you have been during this period of time. Even if Chinyu used his knees to think, he could guess that little Meaty definitely had a purpose for going to the Gold Crow clan. It was fine even if she didn't say anything. He had already given her a warning in advance, and judging from her past behavior, little Meat would probably exercise some restraint. Thinking this, he closed his eyes and continued to digest the last bit of disobedient strength in his body. The distance from the campsite to the Gold Crow clan wasn't short. Even if the team didn't rest from the moment they set off, it would still take them close to 2 days. Along the way, even sitting in the carriage, Chinyu could feel many eyes peering at him. There was curiosity, probing, and puzzlement, but most of all, there was hostility and coldness. All of this constantly reminded Chinyu that he was currently in the territory of the Berserkers. But at the same time, it gave him a strange feeling from the bottom of his heart, and he laughed bitterly to himself. Come to think of it, the barbarian sovereign who had achieved such a feat, not to mention that no one else would be able to do it in the future, at least no one had ever done it in the past. It was too frustrating. Luckily, the name of the Gold Crow clan was still a powerful deterrent. Even though Chinyu could feel several icy cold auras that harbored ill intentions, after circling around for a moment, they all withdrew and hid themselves. 2 days later, they arrived at the Gold Crow clan. Shwa! Chinyu opened his eyes. A sharp light surged in the depths of his pupils before immediately returning to tranquility. Compared to before, there didn't seem to be any changes. But his eyes were much clearer, like the sky that had been washed by rain. Within his body, the strength that had risen in recent days had been completely taken back, refined, and controlled. Across from him, Little Meat's eyes were filled with surprise. She didn't think that Chinyu would progress so quickly. But when Chinyu looked up at her, her expression had returned to tranquility, not revealing anything at all. As the two looked at each other, the carriage came to a stop. The voice of a Gold Crow clan warrior sounded out, "Gold Crow General, madam, we've arrived." That's right, the Gold Crow clan had only invited Chinyu alone. If Little Meat wanted to come, she needed a suitable identity. Madam, as the saying went, husband and wife were one. Little Meat snorted, and a trace of impatience appeared on her face. It was clear that she wasn't satisfied with this form of address. Chinyu's lips twitched. If you don't like me, you can choose not to come. It's not like I'm forcing you to come. He pushed open the door and got off the carriage. He thought for a moment and then turned around. Madam, come down. If you don't like me, then I will say it. Little Meat's face blushed red, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. She didn't speak. She placed her hand in Chinyu's and let him lead her down the carriage. This obedience caused Chinyu, who had been waiting to see her make a fool of herself, to feel that something was wrong and uncomfortable. He took several steps out and calmly let go, standing a little to the side. The Gold Crow clan had clearly received the news ahead of time. Young Patriarch Curry was waiting outside the camp. He stepped forwards and bowed. Gold Crow General, madam, thank you for coming on time. He stood up and gestured with his hand. The celebration is today. The Patriarch is in the great tent, entertaining guests from all over. I have come to greet you. Many eyes gathered on Qin Yu's face. From the clothes and auras of these barbarians, it was clear that they weren't from the Gold Crow clan. Since they appeared here today, they should be the same as Qin Yu. They had been invited to watch the ceremony. Although the barbarians knew ahead of time that the Gold Crow clan had invited the desolate man, General Jin Wu, to come and watch the ceremony, they still found it hard to believe when they saw this scene with their own eyes, especially when young Patriarch Curry respectfully came to greet them. Smuggling was something that the Western wasteland could obtain countless benefits from, but that was from their perspective. To the barbarians, the various materials that they could exchange from the desolate man country could also strengthen their own strength. As long as they had the qualifications to be invited to the Gold Crow clan, they would always support and approve of this trade. But approval and support didn't mean that they would view the desolate man country as trustworthy friends. In the end, they were mortal enemies that had a blood feud with each other for generations. At most, smuggling was just a matter of using each other. The Gold Crow clan's attitude was incomprehensible. Umph! A cold snort sounded out in Qin Yu's ears. He looked up and met with several icy cold eyes. The sense of power released from the Gold Crow clan's bodies was completely different from the sense of power released from the Gold Crow clan's bodies. If the Gold Crow clan's bodies could be compared to the blazing sun in the sky, then the Gold Crow clan's bodies could be compared to incomparably hard ice blocks in an ice cave, which was completely dark and extremely cold. Extreme and extreme cold. In the scorching hot air of the Gold Crow clan, the existence of these lumps of ice was even more striking. This was the case to begin with. When killing intent rose in their hearts, the way they looked at others would naturally be even colder. That's right. Qin Yu could feel killing intent from the eyes of these people. It was thick and bloody, like a sharp blade that was hidden in the darkness and stained with blood. It seemed as if it would cut down in the next moment and behead Qin Yu. But it was clear that these lumps of ice weren't prepared to attack Qin Yu right now. After a cold snort, they glanced at each other for several breaths of time. Then, they turned and left on their own initiative, vanishing from the tents. Coolly, the young master of the Gold Crow clan, had an awkward expression. He explained, "These are the barbarians of the Ice Carp tribe. They were invited to come and watch the ceremony. They hate the desolate, but please rest assured that we will ensure that everything goes smoothly and that you will not be disturbed." Qin Yu nodded, but he sneered inwardly. Perhaps this time, it would be difficult for the Gold Crow clan to fulfill their promise. The Ice Carp tribe. He had never seen them before, nor had he had any dealings with them. Was it really, as Ku Li said, that they hated the desolate, or was there some other secret behind this? Qin Yu was well aware that although he had gained a firm foothold in the Western Border Army and opened up the situation, there were still people who didn't like him. Moreover, they had high positions and tyrannical strength. There was no doubt that Wu Shuai was ranked first. But since the Sky-bearing King had personally come, the two sides should have reached some sort of agreement. Otherwise, the Sky-bearing King would have instructed him before he left. Those in high positions needed face. The higher one's status was, the more so. There was a possibility that Wu Tongtian would secretly act, but it wasn't high. In addition, there was the great general of the Western Border Army from the Yi family, Yi Sangdu. He had entered the barbarian territory alone and taken over the smuggling business of the Emperor clans. Qin Yu didn't believe he wouldn't grasp such a good opportunity. There was a sudden mocking laugh in his ears. "They say I'm looking for trouble, but look who it is. There are enemies everywhere I go." Qin Yu rubbed his nose. It seemed this was true, and it wasn't easy to refute. Then he would follow the old rules. He would pretend he didn't hear anything. Western Border Army Camp. Yi Sangdu was in charge. His expression was gloomy, and his eyes were icy cold. As the number 2 character of the Border Army, he was also someone who held true power in the Yi family. Even though he was in the camp, that didn't mean he didn't know what was happening deep within the barbarian territory. Zhou Dafu had betrayed him. He didn't move. Normally, he seemed to have some sinister methods, but he never thought he would be so useless. At this time, General Jin Wu's prestige had been established. He held the power of smuggling, and no one could stop him. But luckily, Yi Sangdu only wanted to borrow these idiots to give him some trouble. In order to kill General Jinwu, he never placed his hopes on Zhou Dafu and the others. A group of smugglers might seem bold and ruthless, but if they wanted to kill a general of the army, they were far from being qualified. General Jinwu, this time I want to see just how you will break out of this. With a sneer, he picked up the teacup in front of him and drank it in one gulp. Golden Crow Tribe, Patriarch's Tent. Powerhouses were as common as clouds, and their auras were obscure. Qin Yu was respectfully welcomed. As he entered the tent and saw many barbarian powerhouses, he felt a deep comfort in his heart. They were the backbone of the barbarians. If he wanted to lead the barbarians to rise in the future, he would need to draw support from them. His thoughts affected his mood. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. He cupped his hands together and said, "Desolate man, General Jinwu has been invited." As the patriarch saw the smile on the other side's face, he immediately cheered in his heart. Although he had already learned of this person's identity from Grandmaster Bo Ri, no one else in the tent knew. Facing the desolate man, especially the generals of the Western Border Army, the barbarian powerhouses who had lost countless men on the battlefield over the countless years could be imagined. Even in such a situation, General Jinwu was still free and easy. Just this smile alone was enough to show how extraordinary he was. "General Jinwu, I am Ku Tuo. Please sit." He reached out a hand and pointed. It was only then that the barbarians in the tent realized that the seat near Lord Ascetic Cultivator had been left for this desolate man. They couldn't help but frown, dissatisfaction in their eyes. Ku Tuo took all of this in his eyes, but pretended not to see it. Qin Yu smiled and thanked them. Then, he welcomed the countless icy gazes and led Misty into the seat. Bo Ri lifted a palm. "General Jinwu, we meet again." Her tone was calm, revealing a trace of intimacy. Qin Yu nodded. "Greetings, Grandmaster." Thinking for a moment, he turned and introduced, "Madam, why haven't you greeted Grandmaster Bo Ri yet?" Misty glared at Qin Yu. Roughly translated, it was, "Do you want to die?" A little fellow actually wanted her to greet him on her own initiative? Humph humph. Not even that old man behind him was qualified. Bo Ri shook her head. She looked at Misty and slowly said, "Madam, you come from a noble background, and your strength is unfathomably formidable. There is naturally no need for you to bow to me." Thinking for a moment, he said, "If I may be so bold as to ask, madam, where did you obtain those 2 large trees in the camp?" Misty glanced at him. She felt that this little fellow's words were somewhat to her liking. The main reason was that he knew his own limits and was much stronger than Qin Yu. She explained, "I inadvertently obtained them. I've been raising them by my side." Bo Ri nodded. She wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she didn't bring it up again. Qin Yu saw all of this, and his eyes flashed. Right at this moment, the Gold Crow clan's leader coughed slightly in the tent. All the noises in the tent quickly quieted down. He stood up and swept his eyes over everyone. He smiled and said, "I must thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend my tribe's totem descending ceremony. Just now, the shamans of my tribe have already determined that the totem is about to break out of its shell and will descend into the world within 4 hours. Now, I ask everyone to follow me to the dwelling place of my tribe's totem, the Valley of Tang, and witness this scene together." Bo Ri stood up and said in a soft voice, "The Golden Crow tribe is very satisfied with the general's gift. I believe that after today, many people will want to know the origin of the Golden Crow tribe's totem." Qin Yu smiled. This matter was something he had discussed with Hanya, and they had come to a decision. The matter of the Golden Crow tribe was bound to arouse widespread attention. As long as some news spread out and the ascetic cultivation lineage gave some guidance, this would give them a chance to follow up. At this time, the ring on Qin Yu's finger was faintly emitting a cold intent. In the scorching hot environment of the Golden Crow tribe, this was particularly clear, and this point had already appeared as they approached the Golden Crow tribe. It was clear that this place was extremely suitable for constructing world-breaking tokens. This was in line with Qin Yu and Bo Ri's previous speculations. since the world-breaking tokens were used to destroy the Goliath race. Then if they were placed close to the various large tribes, they would be able to cause as much damage as possible in the moment of eruption. Chinyu stood up and followed the crowd out of the tent. He glanced at Misty from the corner of his eyes. She had a calm expression, as if she were a bystander who didn't care about anything at all. But Chinyu's intuition told him that the emotions in her heart weren't as calm as she appeared. There was a problem. Chapter 1553. The so-called Valley of Soup referred to the lava that flowed like a red soup, like a huge pot of boiling hot pot. The gold crows lived in it. As spirit beasts with the nature of fire, this environment was like the feeling of facing the sea and flowers blooming in spring. It's sour. Today, outside the Valley of Tang, all kinds of canopies had gathered. These were not real canopies, but invisible auras. It was not that the powerful barbarians wanted to show off in front of the Gold Crow tribe. It was just that in front of them, the sea of fire was so hot that they had to use their power to resist and maintain their calm demeanor. The 10-feet-wide fire egg appeared in everyone's sight. Tens of gold crows knelt on the ground, letting their bodies soak in the boiling lava. They bowed their heads to show their respect and submission, carefully looking at the patterns on the surface of the fire egg, which was half buried in the lava, and sensing the aura released from it. The expressions of the powerful barbarians outside the Valley of Tang changed slightly. Very powerful. Not only that, it also gave them a strong mental pressure that came from the top of the food chain. No wonder this time, the Gold Crow tribe had invited all the barbarian tribes to watch the ceremony. They had really picked up a treasure. The Gold Crow totem was killed by the Desolate Man, and the future of the tribe seemed bleak. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, things would change like this? There was a secret. There must be a secret. The eyes of the powerful barbarians shone brightly. They stared at the fire egg in the lava of the Valley of Tang, wishing that they could see something from it. How on earth did the Gold Crow tribe do it? Ku Tual leader smiled and said slowly, "Everyone, what you see in front of you is the new totem of our tribe. It will soon break out of its shell." His eyes swept across the crowd, releasing a strong pressure in his calmness. "I think you all know the rules. I do not need to say more. Please watch quietly." Boom! As his voice fell, a powerful aura was released from the Valley of Tang. Instantly, countless crimson magma surged like angry waves and let out a deafening roar. The expressions of the powerful barbarians changed slightly. While they were shocked, they couldn't help but sneer. He thought to himself, Ku Tual of the Gold Crow clan is such a hypocrite. The Tang Valley is the core of the Gold Crow clan's heaven and earth magic formation. Even if they had other intentions, no one would dare to cause trouble here. Otherwise, wouldn't that be sending their necks to the edge of a blade? Otherwise, the Gold Crow clan would have covered it up long ago and let a new totem appear in the world, instead of causing such a great disturbance. The ice lumps of the Ice Car tribe looked extremely gloomy. Their eyes were flickering with the flames of jealousy. Although the barbarians and the desolate tribes had been enemies for generations and were each other's greatest enemies, the barbarians were not united under the pressure of the outside world. Internally, the forces were similarly intertwined with each other, and there was endless internal strife. The Golden Crow tribe and the Ice Car tribe were known enemies since ancient times. When one side was strong, it would suppress the other side in all aspects. If not for the Holy Land suppressing them, they would have long since killed each other. Currently, the two divisions were evenly matched, and the relationship between them was relatively mild. But as the Gold Crow tribe's new totem appeared in the world, their strength would surely rapidly rise. This mild period would also be broken. Thinking of this, the eyes of the Ice Carp tribe's ice lumps became increasingly cold. Originally, the hesitation in their hearts had completely vanished. Even if they could refuse the cooperation of the Desolate tribe, for the future of their tribe, they had to do something. Chinyu frowned. He turned and looked to the side. Faint traces of cold, energy became particularly obvious outside the burning hot valley. What entered his eyes was a pale face. He had seen this face before. It was that of one of the Ice Carp tribe's barbarians. What was this person doing here? As he thought of the killing intent he sensed before, Qin Yu's frown deepened, and he began to raise his guard. As if sensing Qin Yu's thoughts, Misty calmly took half a step back and fell behind him. Qin Yu turned his head to look at her. Misty's eyes were wide open, filled with innocence. She blinked as she looked back at him, her meaning clear. This is your own trouble, so why should I suffer with you? This woman was far too petty. She was definitely taking revenge on Qin Yu for calling her madam before. As Qin Yu was considering whether or not to pull Hanya over and use her as a shield, the Ice Carp tribe barbarians arrived. But things didn't seem to go as he imagined. The other party's eyes were cold, and their aura was cold. They sneered at him, but didn't do anything, just brushing past him. Looking at where they were going, they were probably going to find the Golden Crow tribe's patriarch. As expected, the other party stopped beside Kuta, and the two of them exchanged several words. Although their voices weren't loud, the outside of the burning hot valley was quiet. There were still bits and pieces of their words that entered their ears. Words like desolate tribe and enemy were particularly clear when they entered their ears. Kutua frowned, his face gloomy. He began to argue with the Ice Carp tribe barbarians. Both sides spoke louder, and the atmosphere became extremely oppressive. The various barbarian tribe powerhouses subconsciously looked at Qin Yu. They frowned, revealing a bit of coldness. The war between the barbarian race and the desolate race had lasted for countless years, and the hatred between them had long since been rooted in their blood and marrow. Not even the waters of the ocean could wash it away. At this moment, in front of the Tang Valley, the Ice Carp clan took the initiative to express their stance, which aroused the dissatisfaction in their hearts. What was the Gold Crow clan trying to do? How could a desolate person be qualified to appear in today's celebration? About the Gold Crow clan, we have our own plans. You Ice Carp clan people, don't worry about it, said Ku Tuol with a darkened face. He could feel the dissatisfied gazes of the people around him, and he sneered inwardly. A bunch of fools. Grandmaster Bo Ri, who came from Holy Land, has remained silent the entire time. How could you have the leeway to speak? How could he not notice such an obvious thing? His brain was probably lacking oxygen. Of course, these people probably did not recognize Grandmaster Bo Ri's identity. The powerhouse of the Ice Carp tribe coldly snorted. He flicked his sleeves and turned around. His eyes were fixed on Qin Yu, exuding a cold aura. This made him feel a little helpless. He thought to himself, we have no enmity between us, so why do we have to act like this when we meet? Besides, are you sure you have the right to view me as an enemy? Be careful, once I transform, I can make you kneel on the ground in the blink of an eye, crying and crying about being conquered. Also, where is your killing intent? I'm certain that my senses are not wrong, but why haven't you made any movements until now? Could it be that you have truly been suppressed by the Gold Crow clan? The powerhouse walked over, approached, and coldly snorted. Up until now, everything was exactly the same as before. Just as the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse was about to brush past him, he was suddenly sent flying backwards, as if he had been ruthlessly plotted against. Large mouthfuls of blood gushed out from his mouth and nose. The moment the blood left his body, it turned into crimson ice crystals, like blood jade. Every single one of these crystals emitted a cold chill. As the powerhouse flew towards the Valley of Tang, his eyes widened, glaring at Qin Yu. His eyes were filled with anger and violent killing intent, as if he had never imagined that Qin Yu would dare to launch a sneak attack on him in front of so many people. Qin Yu, you really didn't think that this powerhouse would do something like this. Rough, far too rough. Any normal person, as long as they didn't have a screw loose in their head, could easily judge that it was impossible for him to attack the Ice Carp tribe cultivator in this situation. But this powerhouse had done so, rough and rude, disregarding face, only seeking results. This was because the Ice Carp tribe had calculated everything. Even if this was a plot that couldn't withstand further scrutiny, everyone present today was barbarians. But today, everyone present was a barbarian, and it was destined that their butts would be crooked. No one would support a desolate person who had intruded into their world, a person who carried the hatred of their tribe. So, as long as the pot fell, it would inevitably fall on Chinyu. Pitter-patter. The ice carp tribe barbarian spat out blood crystals that fell into the crimson magma of the Valley of Tang. He had been wounded and had been severely wounded. The blood he spat out contained his own life essence energy, the most extreme cold strength. The moment it fell into the crimson magma, an extreme low temperature erupted, causing the magma to turn black and solidify. Then, it was covered in a layer of frost. The ice carp tribe barbarian flew deep into the Valley of Tang. Wherever he passed, blood seemed to flow freely. Because of this, a rain of ice crystals fell. But the effect was astonishing. Wherever he passed, the magma rapidly froze and was covered in frost. The scorching strength of the Valley of Tang was instantly disrupted. The fire egg that was half buried in the magma gently trembled. The patterns on its surface began to slow down. It was obvious that because the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse had been ambushed into the Valley of Tang by the Desolate, his blood had turned into ice and fallen into the Valley of Tang. This had greatly affected the birth of the totem. Kutual was enraged. His face paled. He looked at the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse that was still flying deep into the Valley of Tang. His eyes were dark. If he didn't know the background of the desolate Golden Crow general, he would have to think twice. But now, he could be sure that the Ice Carp tribe was deliberately using this opportunity to prevent the Gold Crow tribe's new totem from smoothly being born. This was a heinous crime that could not be forgiven. Without hesitation, Ku Tual lifted a finger. The extreme heat in the Valley of Tang crazily rose. Boom! Countless crimson magma instantly erupted and boiled. A wild and destructive aura was released from within. A dark red column of fire that was nearly black shot into the skies. Like a giant flame tentacle, it lashed towards the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse. There were cries of alarm. Shock appeared in the eyes of the barbarian powerhouses. They clearly didn't think that the Gold Crow tribe would directly kill them. But as they thought about the totem that was about to be born in the Valley of Tang, they could understand. But once the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse was killed on the spot, it would inevitably trigger a fierce conflict. The Golden Crow tribe and the Ice Carp tribe would have a grudge that had erupted for many years. There would surely be a fierce battle, and all of this was caused by the desolate Golden Crow general. Thinking of this, the eyes of the barbarian powerhouses became increasingly cold. Chinyu's expression was calm. When the Ice Carp tribe had brutally framed him, he knew that today's matters wouldn't be easily forgotten. But he didn't panic. The Gold Crow tribe's Ku Tua had already learned of his identity. He naturally wouldn't allow anyone to harm him. In addition, beside him, Grandmaster Bo Ri had remained silent. But as long as he revealed his identity, there wouldn't be any barbarian powerhouse that would dare to continue clamoring. In the worst-case scenario, there was still little Meaty present. Even if they were to clash head-on, the ones to suffer would be those present. But as the barbarian sovereign, it would be best if this didn't happen. As for revealing his identity, Chinyu wouldn't do this unless he had no other choice. The human cultivators were definitely searching for him right now. Once his identity was exposed, the fate that awaited Chin Yu would be incomparably tragic. Between the death of others and his own death, how should he choose? Bah, was there even a need to choose? Chin Yu wasn't a saint. The fiery tentacles were about to hit the expert of the Ice Carp tribe and crush the insidious and violent ice lump into powder on the spot. But at that moment, a weird scene suddenly took place. The flame tentacles that fell on the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse seemed to pass through an illusory shadow, directly passing through. Ha! A flame mark on the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse shattered and dissipated. Fire's symbol. Ku Tuar roared, his face filled with anger and shock. Behind him, not too far away, a young man suddenly paled, his eyes filled with endless fear. The Tang Valley was the residence of the Golden Crow and also the hub of the Golden Crow tribe's heaven and earth grade formation. There were only a few people in the tribe that had the qualifications to obtain a fire symbol and enter this place. Kutuwa turned his head and looked at the pale-faced young man, pain and helplessness in his eyes. Although this eldest son of his had always appeared weak and incompetent, he never imagined that this unfilial son of his would be so stupid as to give the fire symbol to the Ice Carp tribe. And after this delay, the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse that had been sent into the Tang Valley had already reached the deepest depths. Below it was the fire egg that was half buried in the magma. Puff! This person opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with his most powerful life essence. This blood smashed into the fire egg on the ground. The totem of the Golden Crow tribe perish. Chapter 1554. Fire and water were incompatible. This was not just a saying. Outside the Tang Valley, the expressions of the barbarian tribe powerhouses changed. It was as if they had seen the Gold Crow tribe's incomparably powerful totem being destroyed at the last moment before it was born. It was like an exquisite porcelain that had just been fired in a crimson furnace and had not been cooled down naturally. Instead, it was sprayed into an icy spring. Extreme heat and extreme cold collided. Before one's foundation was stabilized, how could it not be destroyed? The barbarian tribe powerhouses, no matter how shocked they were, finally came to their senses. What happened today was indeed a conspiracy of the Ice Carp tribe. But what did this have to do with them? The so-called change in expression was only on the surface. Inwardly, they were a bit happy. They thought, if we don't have such a powerful totem, why can a Gold Crow tribe have it? The barbarian tribe was not a monolithic entity. Of course, they had their own areas of influence. They were invited here because their tribe was not too far away from the Gold Crow tribe. The rise of the Gold Crow tribe was bound to harm the interests of others. Angry roars exploded in everyone's ears. Several Gold Crow tribe elders madly rushed into the Tang Valley. But everyone could see that they were too slow. It was too late to stop them. Crack, crack, like hailstones falling to the ground, they hit the surface of the fire egg. The crimson eggshell was incomparably hard and did not break. But on the surface, the surging crimson light was quickly extinguishing. Kacha! Sounds continuously rang out as a layer of ice appeared and covered the fire egg. In the blink of an eye, the dazzling light on its surface disappeared. It turned into a black stone without any aura. Dong! With the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, the Ice Carp tribe powerhouse that had flown into the Tang Valley finally fell down. He rolled several times and spat out a mouthful of blood. He roared, "General Jin Wu, how dare you sneak attack me?" At the same time, he turned to look at the fire egg. After making sure that it was completely silent, his eyes revealed relief. "Today, because of my carelessness, I caused such a disaster. I will apologize with my death." He raised his hand and slapped between his eyebrows. As the saying goes, dead men tell no tales. He committed suicide in front of everyone. Even if no one believed him, there was no way to make a dead man change his mind. This black pot, General Jin Wu had no choice but to bear it. Besides, this incident could also shut the mouth of the Gold Crow clan, so that no matter how much they hated the Ice Carp clan, they wouldn't be able to claim the moral high ground against the Ice Carp clan. After all, he was also a victim. The culprit behind all of this was the desolate man, General Jin Wu. By killing him, not only could he complete the deal with the desolate man, but he could also destroy the totem of the Gold Crow clan. It was indeed a good deal. His lips curled up in an imperceptible smile. With a puff sound, this person's head exploded on the spot, red and white blood splattering everywhere. Since he had decided to commit suicide, he naturally had to do it decisively and thoroughly, not giving anyone a chance to interfere. The entire place was deathly silent. Everyone looked at the headless corpse on the ground. No matter what their expressions were like, they couldn't help but give him a thumbs up in their hearts. These ice lumps of the Ice Carp tribe indeed had hearts made of ice. They were ruthless to others, but even more ruthless to themselves. Putong, followed by a muffled thud, the Gold Crow clan young man, who was standing behind Ku Tua, couldn't stand the mental torture anymore and directly sat on ground. His thighs trembled, and a faint smell of urine immediately filled the air. Kutuwa frowned and slowly said, "The young master has lost his mind. Send him away to rest." The young man who had fallen on the ground trembled when he heard this. He suddenly raised his head and howled, "Father, I know I was wrong, Father. It's them. They forced me to do this. I had no other choice. Father, please give me a chance." His voice was fast and urgent. Anyone could hear the fear and despair in his heart at this time. Kutual waved his hand. Two Golden Crow clan elders with ugly faces stepped forward and lifted him up. As if his spine had been pulled out, the young man instantly went limp and was dragged away. In the Ice Carp tribe, a barbarian spoke in a deep voice. As for the fire talismans, we can explain. Since they had made their move, they had naturally made preparations to shirk all responsibility, not giving anyone the slightest chance to use against them. Kutuwa didn't give him a chance to speak. He waved his hand and interrupted. "This isn't important. What's important is, how do you want to die?" Everyone's complexions changed. Feeling the scorching hot aura in the air, no one thought he was joking. The faces of the Ice Carp tribe people slightly changed. Kutuwa, our elder Heihan, was plotted against and was thrown into the Tang Valley, causing this result. Now, Elder Heihan has already committed suicide. Do you still want to keep us here? Plotted against? Do you think that our entire Gold Crow clan is blind? Kutuwa stepped forward. As he moved, the flames in the Tang Valley soared up. Lava shot up into the sky, rumbling and boiling as a rain of lava poured down. Kutuwa, if you have evidence, the Ice Carp tribe is at your disposal. But if you don't, the leader of the Ice Carp tribe turned and bowed to Hanya. "Grandmaster, please uphold justice." Kutuwa from the Holy Land was here. He was their trump card. For so many years, the conflicts between the two clans had always been suppressed by the Holy Land. If the Kutuwa tribe stood by and did nothing today, it would damage their reputation. Hanya opened her eyes, calmly looking at him. Leader Heiqing is right. Everything requires evidence. You can't make a decision on your own. Heiqing bowed. Grandmaster is right. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. Who dared to disobey the Holy Land's declaration? As for evidence, Elder Heihan had committed suicide. The dead could no longer speak. Could it be that the Golden Crow clan could make the dead speak? Kutuwa stopped. The anger and killing intent on his face suddenly disappeared without a trace. He looked at Heiqing and the other barbarians of the Ice Carp tribe, a faint smile on his face. Although the dead can't speak, that doesn't mean we can't find evidence. As his aura faded away, the raging Tang Valley also calmed down. Lava fell down, opening up everyone's sight. A cry of alarm sounded out. Heiqing's heart shrank. He turned to look at the Tang Valley. At some unknown time, the ice that covered the half-buried fire egg had melted away. The dim patterns on its surface began to shine once more. But unlike before, half of this fire egg was the same as before. It was crimson red and emitted a powerful aura of heat. The other half was deep blue. The light it emitted was like a giant ice crystal, reflecting a dazzling halo of light in the air. A powerful suction force was constantly emitted from the fire egg. Naturally, it was the Tang Valley in front of it that continuously provided it with fire energy. As for the other half of the fire egg, it was the Ice Carp tribe elder Heihan who had committed suicide. The remaining strength in his corpse had been extracted and taken away. Ice and fire become one. Heiqing involuntarily cried out. His face paled as he stared at the scene in front of him, his body shaking. Kutuwa smiled. Patriarch Heiqing has good eyesight. That's right, it is indeed ice and fire become one. His eyes revealed an unconcealable joy. Originally, my tribe was worried about what reason we could use to ask the Ice Carp tribe to help our tribe's totem smoothly descend into this world. After all, everyone knows that the relationship between our two tribes isn't harmonious at all. But I never imagined that before I could say anything, something like this would happen. An Ice Carp tribe elder committed suicide. The extreme cold energy in his body was enough to help my tribe's totem complete the fusion of ice and fire, and the effect was incomparably perfect. So, we really must thank this Ice Carp tribe, Elder Han, for this selfless act. A deathly silence. Outside the Tang Valley, all the barbarians widened their eyes as they looked at this scene. The reversal was too sudden, hard for them to accept. So all of this had been part of the Gold Crow tribe's plan. They had calculated that the Ice Carp tribe would help, so they beat them at their own game. All of this sounded simple, but looking at the current scene, everyone couldn't help but shout out in their hearts, "Brilliant, truly brilliant." The ruthless and evil Ice Carp tribe had gone for wool and come home shorn. They had suffered a crushing defeat. One of their own elders had died, but they had helped the Gold Crow tribe's totem complete the final step before it descended into this world, fusing ice and fire into one. Just thinking about this outcome made one feel unbearable. One felt as if they wanted to vomit blood. Qing's face paled, then turned black, then red. Finally, a strange layer of black and red that was almost purple appeared. People were worried that in the next moment, he would explode from anger and die on the spot. The people of the Ice Carp tribe looked as if they had lost their parents, their eyes filled with pain. In this world, the most unbearable thing was, of course, when one's enemy possessed a power that was greater than one's own, so that one could only be pressed against the ground and rubbed against the ground. If there had to be an exception, then it would be that this matter itself had been caused by them. Nothing in the world could be more miserable than this. But in fact, the Gold Crow tribe didn't only have these fists. Otherwise, Kutu wouldn't have needed to put on an act of raging to the heavens just now. He had dug a huge pit, but the Ice Carp tribe was unprepared and stepped right into it. In the Tang Valley, a bird cry suddenly rang out. The eggshell of ice and fire into one instantly cracked and fell. A young gold crow flew out. Its wingspan was less than 10 feet. Like its kind, its body was burning with raging flames, but the feathers on its head were faintly ice blue, faintly resembling a crown, releasing an extremely cold aura. Blazing flames and extreme cold, these two diametrically opposed strengths didn't clash at all at this time. Instead, they flowed smoothly and naturally. The gold crow suddenly spread its wings and soared into the highest heavens. It tore through the clouds above its head, its figure as fast as lightning. Feeling the aura released by the gold crow, Kutuo's smile became increasingly bright. His face was filled with joy and excitement. The surrounding Goliath powerhouses all had looks of envy. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they could see the growth potential of this gold crow. If it was given some time, once it entered its adult state, the strength of the Gold Crow tribe would surely rise to an astonishing degree. Whoosh! The gold crow howled as it flew back. But it didn't return to the Tang Valley. Instead, it flew straight toward Xinyu. It folded its wings, revealing a bit of intimacy and respect. The gold crow landed in front of him and gently rubbed its head against the back of his hand. Qinyu's eyes flashed. He reached out a hand and rubbed its head, resisting the urge to turn around and look at little Meaty behind him. Others might not be able to see it, but Xinyu could clearly sense that the gold crow's goal from the start was the person behind him. It was only after receiving a warning that it took advantage of the situation to land in front of Xinyu and express its closeness to him. Kutuo revealed a bitter smile and envy. Then he sneered, "My tribe's totem has descended into the world and is innately able to sense danger. If it really was the gold crow that attacked, how could there be such a scene? This is the best evidence." Puff! Qing spat out a mouthful of blood. His body wavered. The Ice Carp tribe had been completely defeated. Patriarch! With cries of alarm, several people from the Ice Carp tribe hurried forwards to support him. Their eyes stubbornly stared at Kutuo. Within their hatred and resentment, there was also a bit of panic that couldn't be concealed. Kutuo was disinclined to waste words with them. He bowed and said, "I ask Grandmaster Bo Ri to judge." When the Ice Carp tribe's Qing had spoken, the various Goliath powerhouses had already made their guesses. Now, as they saw this scene again, their hearts trembled. They had already determined Bo Ree's origins. Everyone hurriedly bowed, lowering their heads to show their respect. Bo Ree's eyes were as calm as a lake. Her gaze fell on the people of the Ice Carp tribe. She slowly said, "The evidence is conclusive and the facts are in front of you. Do you have anything to say?" Hei Ching struggled. He pushed away the people around him and clenched his teeth. "Grandmaster," Elder Hei Han acted recklessly. "I, Hei Ching, am willing to accept punishment for my negligence." The Ice Carp tribe absolutely could not admit to this matter. The consequences would be too severe. "Humph. Do you think you can overlook this matter with just a single sentence of negligence?" Ku Tuo coldly sneered. Bo Ri said, "The Ice Carp tribe's actions were improper. Their tribal territory will be reduced by 3,000 miles. They will also have to offer the Gold Crow tribe 10 cubic meters of profound ice every year for 30 years. "Grandmaster," Hei Ching fiercely looked up. Losing 3,000 miles of territory was fine, but profound ice was a holy object created by the Ice Carp tribe's totem. There was an extremely limited amount produced each year, and it could help tribal warriors increase their strength. 10 cubic meters every year for 30 years was an extremely heavy punishment. Bori had a calm expression. "If you don't accept the verdict, the Ice Carp tribe can appeal to the Holy Land." Her eyes were deep. Hei Ching spat out another mouthful of blood. He bitterly smiled. "Ice Carp tribe accepts punishment." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.